Chapter 58. A 20-meter-long steel python condensed from flying daggers killed the 100-meter-long python in an instant. No one had expected this. But what they couldn't figure out was how a steel python could spit out something from its mouth. They didn't know that this was Immortality's intention. After Immortality's telekinesis reached level 8, he could control the release of acid from the bloodthirsty corpse slaying flying dagger at will. The steel python had swallowed more than 3,000 zombies without wasting a single drop of blood. Just think about it, how much acid would be converted into. When the 100-meter giant python attacked, Immortality used his telekinesis to force the acid out. From the perspective of others, it looked like the steel python had spat out acid. In the distance at the top of the building, the mutant owl saw this scene and its eyes narrowed. Its hoarse voice trembled a little as it said, "That's right. Leader, you have to do it yourself. This human is too strong." As soon as it finished speaking, the leader leaped. It fell from a building that was dozens of meters high to the ground. Boom! It was the same as Immortality's previous jump from a tall building. The ground cracked inch by inch. The shock wave sent the falling snowflakes flying in all directions. Then the leader took a step. One step was more than 180 meters. Thump, 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 its feet tapped continuously and it quickly jumped forward. Seeing this, the mutant owl secretly praised in its heart. After the leader was promoted to level 8, it was indeed much stronger. However, the next moment, the mutant owl was stunned. The direction the leader jumped in wasn't the human at all. Instead, it jumped into the distance. Wait, the leader actually ran away? The mutant owl couldn't figure it out. It immediately spread its wings and flew in the direction the leader ran. Flying above the leader's head, it asked in a hoarse voice, "Leader, why didn't you kill this human?" The zombie with 3 claw marks let out a zombie growl and said, "After a while, I will be promoted to level 9 strong mutant zombie. At that time, I will kill their base and kill this human." The mutant owl was speechless. These words sounded familiar. A few months ago, when the leader was still a level 7 mutant zombie, he had said the same thing. But then again, this human was clearly much stronger than before. If that was the case, when the leader became a level 9 variant zombie, how strong would this human be? Thinking of this, the mutated owl turned its head and looked at Immortality through the wind and snow from afar. Then it flapped its wings and quickly followed its leader. At the same time, Immortality killed the 100-meter-long python. He looked around with his blood demon eyes. There wasn't too much corpse energy in the vicinity. On the other hand, there was still corpse chi gathering somewhere after they crossed the mountain. With a thought, thousands of flying daggers began to clean up the remaining mutated zombies and strong mutated zombies. Any zombie would be easily minced into meat paste under his flying knife. When the rescue team saw how powerful the mysterious expert was, they were shocked. They all had the urge to worship him. Just how strong was the mysterious expert? It seemed that until today he had never seen an opponent who could withstand a single blow from the mysterious expert. He was so strong that he didn't seem human. Thousands of flying daggers, wherever they passed, not even a blade of grass was left. Even the remains of the buildings. After the flying daggers flew past, they all collapsed. It took half an hour to clean up the zombies in the entire city. Immortality's evolution points had reached 9.57 million points. He only needed the last 400,000 points. He couldn't help but shake his head slightly. Then the blood demon eyes crossed the mountain in front of him and looked at the corpse chi there. It seemed that he had to go there again. Thinking of this, he tapped his feet lightly and quickly left along the snow-covered road. Behind him, the rescue team members were all stunned. Where is the mysterious expert going? Do you want to go and see? Better not. With the mysterious expert's performance these years, he doesn't seem to like being disturbed. Everyone looked at each other and couldn't make up their minds. In the end, everyone's eyes fell on Guojutao. He was the strongest person here and also the vice leader of the hunting group. At this time, he naturally had to make the decision. Guojutao thought for a moment and said, "I know everyone wants to go and see. I wanted to. Then, let's go and see. But if we annoy the mysterious expert, everyone will say that they are worried about him and followed to see." Everyone nodded when they heard this. Then they followed Immortality's back and walked in the direction of the mountain. However, Immortality's speed was very fast, 150 meters per second. And in order to take care of the 2 psychokinesis, they could only go 5 or 6 meters per second at most. At this time, the weakness of psychokinesis's body was exposed. These 2 psychokinesis were also very helpless. There was no other way. Psychokinesis's fighting strength was strong, but their bodies were so weak. The heavens are fair. You can't have both sides, right? But soon they all thought, there really was someone who occupied both sides. It was really enviable. While Immortality was running in the direction of the mountain pass in front of him, he saw a string of footprints on the snow in front of him, extending into the distance alone in the snow. He wasn't surprised. When he was fighting in Central Park just now, his blood demon eyes saw a corpse aura on the roof of a building in the distance. Although it was only the corpse aura emitted by one zombie, it was stronger than the corpse aura of the 300-strong mutated zombies added together. So at that time in the park he waited for this corpse aura to come. But what he didn't expect was that not only did the corpse aura not come, but it also escaped at an extremely fast speed. The footprints now should be left by the owner of the corpse aura. Looking at the direction of the footprints, it should be on the other side of the mountain, where the corpse aura was pervading. Soon he went over the mountain in front of him. Immortality saw a mountain about a few hundred meters high in front of him through the heavy snow. At the foot of the mountain, about 5 kilometers away from him, there was a village. Above the village, the corpse aura was pervasive. The blood-red corpse aura was so dense that it seemed to be solidifying. And the place where the footprints pointed was obviously that village. Immortality paused his footsteps. He took out a bottle of brain cell recovery medicine and drank it. Although in the battle in Central Park he didn't even sweat. He consumed some of his mental power but only 20%. But in this village the corpse aura was too dense. So it was better to be careful. It was always right to restore his mental power to its peak state first. At the same time, Immortality was also thinking of his own escape route. If there was a powerful existence in the village, how could he escape? Thinking of defeat before thinking of victory. This was Immortality's consistent style of doing things. After all, this was the apocalypse. Only survival was the way to go. Chapter 59. Before Immortality did anything, he didn't want to win, he wanted to lose first. It was the same at this moment. Especially when he saw the speed of the strong corpse energy leaving just now, it was probably about 180 meters per second. Obviously this was a level 8 strong mutated zombie. Although Immortality believed that with his current strength, crushing a level 8 strong mutated zombie wouldn't be a problem. But there was always a chance. What if something unexpected happened? At that time, even if he wanted to escape, his speed would be far inferior to that level 8 strong mutated zombie. Therefore, before going to that village he had to think of a way to escape. After thinking about it, Immortality couldn't think of any way. He couldn't rely on those rescue teams. They wouldn't be enough to fill the gaps between the strong mutated zombies' teeth. He shook his head. Immortality sighed helplessly. Forget it, I'll sign in first and see if I can get anything good. He originally planned to stay in the ruins of the C9 base for today's sign-in opportunity. But his attention was only on that strong mutated zombie just now and he didn't have time to sign in. Now that he urgently needed a way out, he could only try signing in here. But he didn't have much hope. It would be strange if he could sign something good in this desolate mountain range. System, sign in. Soon, the system responded, frowny face, sign in successful. Sign in event, tracking a level 8 strong mutated zombie. Sign in reward, dragon shadow step. Immortality was slightly stunned. There was indeed something wrong. The event sign-in mechanism finally came in handy. The event sign-in mechanism, immediately signing in after doing something special, would give a special reward. He hadn't used it much before. He didn't expect that this time, following the footprints of the level 8 mutated zombie, it would be activated. He focused and looked at the skill description. Dragon Shadow Step. The footwork left behind by the Wind Dragon Emperor when he walked in the human world and transformed into his human form. As fast as lightning. Using this footwork will leave an afterimage in the shape of a giant dragon, hence the name. When Immortality saw this he was delighted. What he lacked really came. He was worried that his speed wouldn't be as fast as that level 8 strong mutated zombie, so he signed in the Dragon Shadow Step. At this moment he only felt a wave of information in his mind. How to use the Dragon Shadow Step, all the techniques were poured into his brain. And in that instant he learned the Dragon Shadow Step. In the next moment his figure moved slightly. He instantly disappeared from where he stood. When he reappeared he was already 1,000 meters away. 1 second, 1,000 meters. Looking back he didn't even leave any footprints in the snow behind him. Dragon Shadow Step was not teleportation. However, his running speed was so fast that it looked like teleportation. When he used Dragon Shadow Steps to rush over, he was clearly stepping on the snow. But now there were no footprints. Traceless snow steps. Immortality couldn't help but think to himself, This Dragon Emperor is really strong. He looked at the place where he was standing before. A gigantic dragon-shaped phantom was left behind. Although the shadow was blurry, one could still make out its rough outline. This gigantic dragon-shaped phantom was 10 meters tall. From beginning to end, it was more than 20 meters long. When he spread his wings, they were actually more than 20 meters wide. Even though it was just an illusion, it seemed to be filled with a powerful pressure. Sure enough, anything that was related to the word dragon was basically related to awesome. Moreover, this dragon shadow step consumed very little physical strength. Could be used for a long time. Emoshir couldn't help but admire the Wind Dragon Emperor who created the Dragon Shadow Step. At this moment, after using Dragon Shadow Step to cross 3,000 meters, he had a better understanding of the Dragon Shadow Step in his mind. He understood that the Dragon Shadow Step he was using now was only at the entry level. There were still 3 levels after that: small success, large success, and great perfection. This made Emoshir look forward to it. The entry level was already 1,000 meters in one step. How strong would the great perfection be? Then he slowed down and walked slowly towards the village filled with corpse aura. After all, this was a place where corpse aura gathered. Naturally, he had to be careful. At the same time, in the center of the village, in the farmyard, the zombie with 3 claw marks had just returned. The mutated owl was also on a fence post in the yard and had just landed. At this moment, a zombie outside the door growled and said, "Leader, a human is coming towards the village." When the mutated owl heard this, its wings couldn't help but flap twice. It made a hoarse sound. The leader's heart also trembled slightly. That human was actually chasing after them like a ghost. As the leader of these zombies, he used to be the one who hunted those humans. When had he ever been chased by a human? It was simply a great humiliation. Thinking of this, he suddenly turned his head. The 3 claw marks on his face seemed to have blood oozing out. In his grayish-white eyes, anger burst out and he roared, "This human is too much. Send out all the strong mutated zombies." The zombie outside the door quickly lowered its head and roared, "Yes." The next moment, accompanied by the roar of the zombie outside the door, the originally quiet mountain village was suddenly filled with roars. More than 500 mutated zombies let out earth-shattering roars and rushed out of those houses. They ran straight towards Emoshir at the entrance of the village. At the same time, the zombie with 3 claw marks turned around and headed towards the backyard. Outside the backyard there was originally a field. Before the outbreak of the zombie virus, the wheat, corn, soybeans, and other crops that the villagers collected were all peeled, dried, and bagged on this field. But now, on this field, there was a huge blood pool with a diameter of 50 meters. Above the blood pool there seemed to be a thick layer of blood mist. A thick smell of blood spread out in all directions. The zombie with 3 claw marks, with a plop, jumped into the blood pool. In the blood pool, the blood water began to bubble. Gradually, like boiling water, waves of blood began to surge. In the blood pool, dozens of finger-thick arms stretched out and climbed up the body of the zombie with 3 claw marks. Finally, the zombie with 3 claw marks was completely wrapped up. Like a blood dumpling. The zombie with 3 claw marks secretly roared in his heart, "Mere humans, a group of reptiles. With the support of the blood pool, you are just ants in front of me." At the same time, Emoshir had already arrived outside the village. 500 strong mutated zombies, with earth-shattering roars, rushed out of the village. Emoshir, however, had a smile on his face. If it was other people facing so many strong mutated zombies, they could only see death and despair. But what Emoshir saw was evolution points. So many strong mutated zombies. It was enough to let his evolution points reach 10 million. Thinking of this, he moved his telekinesis slightly. 900 throwing knives instantly appeared in front of him. In the next moment, it turned into a black python more than 20 meters long. It flew towards these strong mutated zombies. In front of these strong mutated zombies, its head instantly expanded more than 10 times. The huge mouth also expanded more than 10 times. The huge mouth suddenly opened and swallowed more than 10 strong mutated zombies. Chapter 60. With Emoshir's current strength, even level 8 strong mutated zombies would flee upon seeing him. Not to mention these strong mutated zombies that were only level 1 to 5. The flying knife giant python continued to devour these strong mutated zombies. These strong mutated zombies were also considered smart. They deliberately avoided the flying knife giant python's head. However, they seemed to have forgotten that this was a giant python formed by Emoshir's flying knives. Not only could it devour its head, its back, abdomen, tail, anywhere. It could open a huge mouth at any time and devour the zombies. Although these 500-strong mutated zombies also had a speed of more than 100 meters per second. But compared to the flying knife giant python controlled by Emoshir's telekinesis, it was much worse. In a short 5 minutes, these 500-strong mutated zombies were completely devoured by the flying knife giant python. At the same time, in Emoshir's mind, the evolution points had already reached more than 10 million. The system's voice sounded frowny face. Evolution points have reached 10 million. The system can be upgraded. Do you want to upgrade immediately? Emoshir was happy and said, upgrade. The system replied instantly. Frowny face. This upgrade requires 12 hours. Unable to sign in during the upgrade. Emoshir was already familiar with these things, so he didn't pay attention to them. A trace of expectation rose in his heart. After the system upgrade, what kind of reward would he get? His gaze swept across the mountain village in the snow. The blood demon pupil appeared. The air above the mountain village was still shrouded in corpse aura. Obviously there was still something strange in the village. At this moment the ground suddenly shook. In the next moment, an earth-shattering roar suddenly burst forth. Roar? The snowflakes above the entire village were swept away by this roar. The poplar, apricot, and walnut trees in the village, the snow on top of them were slowly shaken off by this sound. In the center of the village there was an ancient scholar tree. The branches of the ancient scholar tree were covered with snow. At this moment, under this sound, the ancient scholar tree seemed to be unable to bear the burden. Kacha 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 sounds continued to sound. The withered tree branches were all broken. The adobe house at the back of the village that had not been lived in for decades shook twice under this sound. It collapsed with a bang, smoke and dust flew, scattering the flying snow. In the next moment, beside the ancient scholar tree, a huge figure appeared. This gigantic figure was completely blood red. He was more than 50 meters tall. The muscles on his body bulged like a mountain. The most terrifying thing about it was that it had 3 ferocious heads with exposed fangs. On its body there were 6 thick arms. 3 heads and 6 arms. Upon closer inspection, one could see that the extra 2 heads and 4 arms were all formed by blood-red arms. Not only that, its gigantic body was actually formed from blood-red arms. In other words, this was a giant formed from blood-red arms. Ordinary people would be scared to death with just one look, or at least wet their pants. Even Emoshir furrowed his brows. There were more and more demons and monsters in the wilderness. Moreover, he could clearly feel that the giant formed by the arm was emitting a terrifying pressure like a mountain. This was a natural pressure formed by the strong against the weak. When other zombies faced Emoshir, they could also feel this natural pressure. Emoshir thought to himself. In terms of level, this big guy's level had probably reached level 10 strong mutated zombie. With his current strength, he had no chance of winning in front of a level 10 strong mutated zombie. That natural pressure actually caused him to have an impulse to submit to it. Obviously this guy was far from what he could compete with. It seemed that he had to use his trump card. If that move didn't work, he would immediately use Dragon Shadow Steps to escape. At the same time, on the mountain in the distance, the 49 members of the rescue team had also appeared. When they heard the earth-shattering roar and looked towards the mountain village, each and every one of them was filled with shock. What did they see? A giant creature with 3 heads and 6 arms more than 50 meters tall. Even when they saw the 100-meter giant python before, they were not so shocked. After all, a 100-meter giant python was still within their scope of understanding. But what kind of monster was this thing with 3 heads and 6 arms? Moreover, even if they were 5 kilometers away, they could still feel a natural pressure. That terrifying pressure wasn't physical. It was a psychological deterrent. That strong pressure made them not dare to look directly at the monster. It even made them have an impulse to kneel down and surrender. Everyone's hearts were filled with terror. How powerful was this creature to make them have such an impulse to surrender? Facing such a powerful creature, could the mysterious strong man handle it? They had been very confident in the mysterious strong man before. But this time they were a little less confident. After all, even the mysterious strong man had never made them have the impulse to kneel down and surrender. Deputy Commander Gua, what should we do? Several hunters asked one after another. Guojutao's eyes were full of shock. After a while he turned his head back. He looked at Emoshir, who was at the entrance of the village. At this time, Emoshir was facing the terrifying creature with 3 heads and 6 arms. He was like a lonely and helpless child. Guojutao wanted to help Emoshir, but after thinking about it for a while, he realized that if they got close to the village, Emoshir would definitely die. Not to mention other things, just the psychological pressure that was as heavy as Mount Tai could make all of them collapse. Only someone as powerful as the mysterious expert could stand so close to the monster without collapsing. Thinking of this, he said to everyone in a feminine voice, "A battle of this level is not something we can participate in. Just stay here and watch." Everyone was silent when they heard this. The appearance of the mysterious strong man made them feel very useless. Now, when the mysterious strong man was fighting, they could only watch from afar. Even watching from 5 kilometers away, he had to bear a great deal of psychological pressure. It could be imagined that they were thousands of miles away from the mysterious strong man. At this time, in the mountain village, beside the huge ancient scholar tree with a diameter of more than 5 meters, the huge 3-headed 6-armed monster seemed to think that the ancient scholar tree was in the way. It waved one hand gently. Crack! The ancient scholar tree with a diameter of more than 5 meters was broken into several pieces like paper. The dead branches scattered in all directions. A few houses nearby were smashed and collapsed. The huge 3-headed 6-armed monster looked at the tiny human at the entrance of the village. It roared in its throat, "Lowly human, pitiful reptile, die." In the next moment, its 6 thick arms formed by tens of thousands of arms suddenly extended. In an instant they stretched out hundreds of meters and grabbed at Emoshur. Dozens of tentacles stretched out from the tip of each of its arms, making threatening gestures as they pounced on Emoshur. Chapter 61. The 50-meter-tall monster with 3 heads and 6 arms did not move towards Emoshur. Instead, it stretched out 6 arms that looked like giant rafters. Those arms instantly extended hundreds of meters and attacked Emoshur. On each arm there were more than 10 tentacles. Hundreds of tentacles pounced towards Emoshur with bared fangs and brandished claws. Emoshur could feel that the tentacles contained a mysterious and powerful power. With his current strength he could not withstand it at all. There was no time to think. His entire body was instantly covered by the mutated giant crocodile scales. At the same time, the blood on his right arm squirmed rapidly. His entire right arm turned into a pitch-black axe blade. The axe blade was more than 3 meters wide and looked extremely sharp. In the next moment, Emoshur leaped lightly with the dragon shadow step. He instantly moved 1,000 meters to the left. He avoided those tentacles. In the air, the axe blade in his hand chopped down at the tentacles that were pouncing towards him. When he chopped down, all the strength in his body was condensed on the axe blade. The axe blade instantly lengthened and widened. It became incomparably huge. It was like a huge black wall that was hanging down from the sky. It chopped down with a loud bang. Emoshur did not stop as he chopped down with the axe. The tip of his foot tapped lightly again. The dragon shadow step was used. His figure instantly retreated 1,000 meters. A 20-meter-tall, 30-meter-wide dragon-shaped afterimage was left in place. A moment later, this afterimage slowly disappeared. At the same time he looked up again. He saw that the entire mountain village had long been divided into 2 by a 5-meter-wide, unfathomably deep ravine. And that huge monster with 3 heads and 6 arms had already been divided into 2 halves. It slowly fell to both sides. It did not even have time to scream. Behind it, the mountain that was hundreds of meters tall also had a huge crack that was 5 meters wide. From this side of the mountain, one could directly see the other side of the mountain. The break of the mountain was as smooth as a mirror. On the distant mountain. When the 49 people saw this scene, they were all tongue-tied. For a long time they could not say a word. The wind had stopped. Heavy snow rustled down. The sound of it falling to the ground could be heard clearly. After a full 2 minutes, someone finally broke the silence. Too strong. This exclamation pulled everyone back from their shock. The mountain-splitting axe is so terrifying. It's funny that I was worried about the mysterious expert just now. Everyone felt the same way. They were indeed worried about the mysterious expert just now. After all, even though they were 5 kilometers away, they still had the urge to kneel down and submit. From their point of view, this was a monster that was even stronger than the mysterious expert. Even if the mysterious expert was undefeated, he might not be able to win. At most, it would be a draw with the monster. But he never expected that. Instant kill. It was still a one-hit kill. In front of the mysterious powerhouse, there seemed to be nothing that could not be killed in one move. He was unbelievably strong. Unimaginably strong. Thinking of the huge axe that almost filled the entire world, they could only look up. This was especially true for the hunters. They knew that the huge axe earlier was the genetic weapon of the mysterious expert. They were all hunters and their genetic martial arts could extend over 100 meters. It swept through the zombies and mutant beasts within 100 meters. They already felt that they were strong enough. But now, compared to the mysterious expert's genetic martial art that could extend for several kilometers and split a mountain with a single chop, it was trash. Not only one person, but all the hunter's genetic martial arts were trash. Xiaodou looked at the mountain that was split open and the 5-meter-wide crack. After a while, she remembered a poem that she learned in elementary school. The gate of heaven is broken and the river opens. In front of the small mountain village that was split in half. Emoshir was also shocked. He did not even pay attention to the system notification in his mind that he had received 10,000 evolution points. Originally, after he used his genetic martial art, he immediately used Dragon Shadow Step to retreat. He was worried that he would not be able to kill the monster with one chop. He did not expect that the genetic martial art would be so strong after using all his strength. That monster's strength had probably reached level 10, a strong mutant zombie. Although its aura was not stable, it seemed to have just entered level 10. But it was still not something he could deal with. In the end, the genetic martial art was so domineering after using all his strength. The axe split the monster in half, and even the mountain behind it was split in half. But after thinking about it, he understood. Right now he possessed the Titan Dragon gene. His genetic martial art was naturally much stronger than a normal hunter's. Normal hunters could only grow bone spikes on their arms and use them as hidden weapons to attack the enemy when they least expected it. But Emoshir's arm could directly condense the Sky Splitter Dragon Spear. Could be seen how perverse the Titan Dragon gene was. It was so perverse that it could support him to kill a strong enemy that was level 5. However, although this genetic martial art was perverse, every time he used it at full strength he would use up more than half of his stamina. Now he felt that his legs were weak. He quickly retracted his genetic martial art. Then, he used his telekinesis to investigate a radius of 1,400 meters to prevent other strong mutant zombies from sneak attacking. At the same time, he was prepared to use Dragon Shadow Step to escape. Under his telekinesis investigation, he discovered that another zombie had crawled out from the monster's body that was split in half. There were 3 claw marks on the zombie's face. The skin on its mouth was torn off by the claw marks. It looked extremely ferocious. But at this moment, the claw-mark zombie had no strength left. Emoshir guessed that it must have used some method to forcefully increase its strength, causing its body to be greatly exhausted. At this moment, the claw-mark zombie's legs had disappeared. Only 2 short blood stakes were left. It supported itself on the ground with both hands and crawled towards the ancient scholar tree with difficulty. It roared in a low voice, "Blood pool, blood pool." The blood pool was the foundation of mutant zombies and could allow them to quickly recover their strength. As long as it crawled to the blood pool, its body would be able to recover again. Then, it would escape from this place and seek revenge on this human after becoming stronger. However, when it crawled to the side of the ancient scholar tree that had already been broken, a feeling of despair that covered the heavens and the earth instantly assaulted its heart. It saw that the blood pool had been split in half from the middle by the axe just now. The blood in the blood pool had long been drained dry. Those thin arms that were like blood vessels in the blood pool were also quickly retracting into the ground. The claw-mark zombie's eyes were filled with despair. No, no! Emoshir saw this scene and lightly tapped his feet. He left behind a giant dragon's afterimage. His figure instantly appeared in front of the claw-mark zombie. The claw-mark zombie slowly turned around in despair. It lay on the ground on its back. Its grayish-white eyes turned and looked at Emoshir with difficulty. In its desperate eyes there was also disbelief. He really couldn't believe that this human could be so strong. Now that he thought about it, he thought that after advancing to a level 8 strong mutant zombie, he could crush this human. How ridiculous this idea was. But after a moment he calmed down. The despair in his grayish-white eyes had disappeared. He looked at Emoshir and slowly shook his head. In his throat, he began to laugh like a broken gong. King will not let you go, Chi, before his voice died away. A bloodthirsty corpse-chopping knife had already pierced through his forehead. Buzz buzz, the bloody hole in his forehead quickly melted and became bigger and bigger. Chapter 62. Emoshir killed the claw-mark variant zombie. In his mind, a notification sounded. Frowny face killed level 8 strong variant zombie, evolution points plus 8,000. However, there was not the slightest ripple in his heart. His gaze fell on the blood pool that had been split into 2 halves. Blood pool again. Before this zombie died, it mentioned the king, again. It seemed that it must be a very strong existence. Facing this zombie, he would need to use all of his strength to kill it in one hit. If he encountered that king, he was afraid that he would not have the slightest ability to fight back. Thinking of this, Mosher suddenly felt a sense of urgency in his heart. After returning to the base this time, he must work hard to sign in. Mosher directly took out 10 bottles of recovery medicine from the system space. Gulp, 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 gulp. With his current physical strength, under such a large consumption, a bottle of recovery medicine was not effective. After drinking 10 bottles at the same time, he felt that his physical strength was quickly recovering. Then his footsteps were light. Every step was 1,000 meters. With every step, a black dragon shadow would be left behind. In just 5 steps he passed through 5,000 meters of snow. He came to the top of the mountain. At this time, his physical strength had been completely recovered. Those people, seeing the mysterious strong man step 1,000 meters, were all secretly shocked. At the same time they looked at the dragon afterimage 1,000 meters away, and one by one they exclaimed, "This is dragon?" When they saw the dragon's shadow slowly disappear, their gazes all gathered on Mosher. With every step he took, he could summon the shadow of a giant dragon. They had never heard of it. Perhaps such a phenomenon could only happen in those novels that boasted about the heavens and the earth. But now this was reality. How could such a vision appear? This had long been far beyond their scope of understanding. However, facing the mysterious strong man, even if they had many doubts in their hearts, they did not dare to ask. Mosher glanced at everyone indifferently. He only said 3 words, "Let's go back." Then he walked forward along the highway. This time he did not use the dragon shadow step. He only slowly moved forward at a speed of 50 meters per second. When the people behind saw this, their hearts trembled. They hurriedly followed. Not long after they left, behind the blood pool on the ground that was split open, the corpse of a mutated owl was slowly recovering. After a while the wounds on its body were completely healed. Then with a push he flew into the distance. Back on the highway, Mosher was still clearing the zombies with his throwing knives just like when he came here. He was about 5 kilometers away from these people. When it was time to rest at night, he waited for everyone to catch up. When the crowd saw that the mysterious expert was waiting for them, they were all overjoyed. He hurriedly walked over. However, they knew that the mysterious expert liked peace and quiet. Therefore they did not dare to get too close to Mosher. They maintained a distance of more than 50 meters. Wuxia ordered his men to find the most intact house in the nearby abandoned city. After cleaning the room twice he said carefully, "That's right. Powerhouse. The room has been cleaned. Please rest there." Mosher did not hold back. He had already saved these people 4 or 5 times. Although each time, it was not specifically to save them, it was just a matter of convenience. But to these people, it was still a life-saving grace. Therefore this special treatment was not excessive. When the crowd saw the mysterious expert enter the room to rest, they breathed a sigh of relief. The mysterious expert had saved them so many times, but he had never asked for anything from them. They had nothing to repay him with. This made them feel uneasy at all. Now that the mysterious expert could accept a little bit of their gratitude, it could be regarded as slightly alleviating their uneasiness. When Mosher was resting, he took out the virtual sentry tower. With the virtual sentry tower, it covered a range of 5 kilometers. He did not have to worry about monsters appearing near him and not being able to predict in advance. The others naturally did not know and still sent 10 people to keep watch at night. The rest of the people sat in an abandoned school auditorium. Listening to the sound of snowflakes falling outside, they did not feel sleepy at all. They had too many questions in their hearts and wanted to ask the mysterious expert for advice. But the mysterious expert did not seem to want to be disturbed. Naturally they did not dare to ask. After a long time the cross-eyed Xiaodou spoke first. "I didn't expect that the mysterious expert was my former colleague at the corpse farm." Since Xiaodou left the corpse farm, he had been very afraid of mentioning the corpse farm. He always thought that it was a disgrace that he could not erase. If someone knew that a dignified corpse hunter actually walked out of the corpse farm, how embarrassing would that be? But now, after saying those words, there was actually a trace of pride in his shame. Sure enough, when the others heard this, they were all surprised. "Corpse farm? The mysterious expert has been hiding in the corpse farm. No wonder we couldn't find him." "You mean you used to be colleagues with the mysterious expert?" Xiaodou nodded and said, "Yes, when he first came to the corpse farm, I was the one who took him to familiarize himself with the environment and work." Speaking of this, Xiaodou felt even more proud. That was the mysterious expert. Even if he could be the mysterious expert's follower, it would be a supreme honor. Not to mention that he used to be his colleague. Xiaodou continued, I still remember when he first came to the corpse farm and introduced himself. Hearing this, everyone listened attentively. They were very interested in anything related to the mysterious expert. Xiaodou continued, at that time he was wearing a white t-shirt and looked a little reserved. He said his name was... Xiaodou, shut up. A sharp shout suddenly interrupted Xiaodou. Everyone was startled. Xiaodou was also startled and looked at Guojutao. Guojutao said with a stern expression, the mysterious expert has been hiding in the base for more than a decade and didn't reveal his identity. Obviously he likes peace and doesn't want trouble. You revealed the information about the mysterious expert. Do you want everyone to disturb him after knowing that he is the mysterious expert? Hearing this, everyone was stunned. Xiaodou's heart skipped a beat. He quickly said, Deputy Commander Gua, that's not what I meant, Guojutao interrupted him once again. His gaze swept across everyone sternly as he coldly shouted, don't worry. If we go back and reveal the identity of the mysterious expert, there will be a lot of people coming to the corpse farm. There will definitely be a lot of people rushing into the corpse farm, and the mysterious expert will be annoyed to no end. Since he likes peace and quiet, then all of you will have to keep this a secret. Don't mention the identity of the mysterious expert to anyone. Otherwise, if you offend the mysterious expert, you will bear the consequences yourself. Hearing this, everyone's heart skipped a beat. If they really pissed off the mysterious expert, it wouldn't be enough even if they died 10,000 times. Especially Xiaodou, whose heart was beating wildly. He almost said the name of the mysterious expert. He didn't dare to imagine what would happen if he really said it. At this time someone asked, if the base chief asks, Guojutao said sternly, even if the base chief asks you can't say anything. In the room far away, Immortality heard this and smiled faintly. This Guojutao was quite sensible. Chapter 63. On the morning of the second day, Immortality and the others braved the wind and snow to continue their journey. Immortality continued to lead the way. At noon, the system's voice suddenly sounded in his mind. Upgrade complete. A smile appeared on Immortality's face. The upgrade was finally completed. Reward, Enhanced Brain Cell Recovery Medicine Reward. Enhanced Brain Cell Enhancer Medicine Reward. Zombie Roar Technique Upgraded Reward. Zombie Summon. Immortality carefully looked at the rewards one by one. There was no need to talk about the Enhanced Brain Cell Recovery Medicine. After upgrading the Zombie Roar Technique, one roar could kill all zombies below level 10 mutated zombies. Previously, it was able to repel 100,000 normal zombies. Now, it was able to kill 100,000 mutated zombies. This was very powerful. In the future, if he encountered any mutated zombies below level 10, he would only need to roar. As for the zombie summon, Immortality felt that it was a bit useless. He had not used the mutated beast summon that he obtained from the previous upgrade. With his strength he could kill any zombies or mutant beasts in a second. Why would he summon them? Maybe he could use them in certain situations in the future. Then the system's voice sounded again. Upgrade details. 1. Double check-in reward mechanism. You can use evolution points to increase the check-in reward by 10 times. 2. Cumulative check-in reward mechanism. If you forget to check in, you can save it for the next time and check in at the same time. 3. Multiple check-in at special locations mechanism. In some special locations you can check in twice or more in one day. Seeing this, Immortality smiled faintly. The system was becoming more and more humane. Having said that, this double check-in reward mechanism was very awesome. He said in his mind, System double check-in reward. Specify the Enhanced Brain Cell Enhancer Medicine. The system replied, Double check-in reward cost, 10,000 evolution points. Specify the reward, 1,000 evolution points. This check-in reward cost, 11,000 evolution points. Please confirm if you want to check in. Immortality was secretly speechless. But that was it. Right now he had plenty of evolution points. He replied in his mind, Confirm check-in. The system immediately replied, Check-in successful. Sign-in reward. Enhanced Brain Cell Enhancer X10. Immortality looked into his mind. Sure enough, in one of the grids, there were already 10 brain cell enhancers. Including the one he received as a reward for leveling up, he now had a total of 11. He took out a syringe, rolled up his sleeves in the wind and snow, and injected it. In the next moment he felt a surge of heat gushing into his head. His thoughts seemed to have become much clearer. It was obvious that his telekinesis had increased a lot. Sure enough, the enhanced version of the brain cell enhancer was at least 10 times more effective than before. Emo licked his lips and took out the second enhanced brain cell enhancer. 5 minutes later, all 11 vials of the enhanced brain cell enhancer were injected. At this moment he felt that his telekinesis had increased tremendously. He could clearly feel that his head was heating up. His thoughts were extremely clear. 5 minutes later he released his telekinesis. Everything within a radius of 800 meters and a diameter of 1,600 meters could be seen clearly. He could detect every snowflake falling within an 800-meter radius. He could also detect the flow of every drop of blood in his body. Phew! Emo exhaled a mouthful of turbid air. His eyes were shining. Finally, his telekinesis had increased again. Level 8 psychokinesis. However, Emo was not satisfied with this. The enhanced version of the brain cell enhancer was much more effective than the previous one. Now he could double the number of check-ins. In other words, he could sign in 10 enhanced brain cell enhancers every day. In this way, it would not be long before his telekinesis would increase again. The next day, Emo spent another 11,000 evolution points to designate the brain cell enhancer and doubled it. On the third day they passed by Chang'an City. Emo originally wanted to designate a reward to sign in. However, when he saw the big wild goose tower in Chang'an City that only had 6 floors left, a thought suddenly flashed through his mind. In the next moment he tapped his feet lightly. In an instant he traveled 1,000 meters. Only the afterimage of a giant dragon was left behind. In just 5 seconds he had already crossed 5 kilometers. He arrived at the bottom of the big wild goose tower. As it had just been cleaned up a few days ago, there were no zombies nearby for the time being. There was no wind. Heavy snow fluttered down. Although the big wild goose tower was full of vicissitudes, it was still a pillar in the heavy snow. At this time, the blood pool under the big wild goose tower that was destroyed by Emo Titan Dragon Claw had long been covered by snow. One could no longer see the bloody and terrifying scene at that time. He came to the side of the blood pool and said in his mind, "System, sign in." The system's voice sounded frowny face. Sign in successful. Sign in location, destroyed blood pool. Sign in reward, demon devouring dragon spear. Demon devouring dragon spear? A weapon. Emo whispered and checked the system backpack. However, nothing new appeared in the system backpack. Could it be a skill? Emo checked his skills again. Demon devouring dragon spear. Condense a dragon spear from the flesh and blood of virus-infected bodies. The more virus-infected bodies, the more powerful the spear. Note: using the demon devouring dragon spear will not consume your physical strength. The power of the demon devouring dragon spear depends on the number of virus-infected bodies condensed into the dragon spear. Emo heard this and nodded again. The sign-in reward this time was very good. It would not consume his physical strength. In other words, if he encountered a powerful enemy in the future, even if he used his genetic martial arts and used up all his physical strength, he would still have one more chance to use the demon devouring dragon spear. That afternoon Emo and the others passed by a village. From afar he saw a corpse aura permeating the air above the village. His heart skipped a beat. Would there be another blood pool there? Although he had used up his sign-in opportunity today, generally speaking, there would be a large number of mutated zombies and strong mutated zombies next to the blood pool. This was a large number of evolution points. Thinking of this, he immediately used Dragon Shadow Steps and rushed towards the village. Behind him, the rescue team couldn't see the corpse aura there. However, they heard the roars of zombies coming from there. Originally, they wanted to avoid as many zombies as possible while they were on the road. However, when they saw that Emo had already arrived at the entrance of the village, they immediately rushed to the village. At the same time in the village, there were more than 20 strong mutated zombies. Leading hundreds of mutated zombies, they were besieging 3 humans. Of these 3 humans, one was Lu Wang. The other 2 were naturally his parents. After he completed the transaction with the zombies, he took his parents and rushed to the C1 base. He didn't think that the others were still alive. He knew how strong the zombies at the C9 base were. Even the mysterious strong man couldn't escape. Everyone in the rescue team and the mysterious strong man would be wiped out there. At that time he would take his parents back to the C1 base and his parents would be safe. Everything seemed to be going according to his plan. However, when he passed by this place this morning, a group of mutated ants suddenly passed by nearby. He could only take his parents and quietly come to the village to hide. Unexpectedly, there were a large number of zombies in the village. There were more than 20 strong mutated zombies. If it were ordinary strong mutated zombies, he could still deal with them. However, these strong mutated zombies were around level 5. He couldn't deal with them alone. The current situation was already very critical. When Immortality saw the situation here, there wasn't the slightest fluctuation in his cold eyes. Chapter 64. Immortality found out what was happening in the village, but he didn't do anything. For the sake of his parents, Lu Wang traversed 500 kilometers of wilderness and brought people back to rescue them. His filial piety was commendable. But for his parents, he had betrayed his brother, who had gone through life and death with him. This made Immortality feel disgusted. It was already good enough that Immortality didn't help those zombies. How could he expect to save them? After looking from afar for a while, Immortality stopped paying attention to them. Instead, he turned his gaze to the west side of the village. His pupils turned blood red. The zombie aura at the west side of the village was 100 times stronger than the zombie aura. Immortality's telekinesis couldn't reach that far. But he guessed that there should be a blood pool there. But he didn't act immediately. Let's see if there was a stronger existence here. At this time, in the center of the village, Lu Wang saw that the strong mutated zombies had already surrounded them. He called out to his parents behind him. Go into the house at the back. His parents hurriedly hid in the house at the back. Lu Wang's eyes were red, and the genetic weapon in his hand was already condensed. The 100-meter-long whip had a sharp blade that shone with cold light. Every time the long whip was swung, hundreds of zombies would be cut in half. But the zombies he killed were only mutated zombies. As for the stronger mutated zombies, they all jumped and dodged his long whip. Lu Wang had only shown the strength of a level 2 hunter when he was surrounded by millions of zombies at base C1. But this time the hunter group followed him out. Immortality found that this guy was a level 4 hunter. But although a level 4 hunter was strong, the zombies surrounding him were all level 4 and 5 mutated zombies. Under the siege of these zombies, he quickly fell into a passive position. But even so, his eyes were red and he fought with his life. He couldn't die. If he died, his parents wouldn't be able to escape. Thinking of this, he roared like a beast. The veins on his forehead bulged. He kept killing the zombies around him. At the entrance of the village, the rescue team had also appeared. When they saw that the person fighting the zombies in the village was Lu Wang, they were all enraged. Lu Wang also saw the humans at the village entrance. At first he was extremely surprised. How could these people still be alive? He clearly knew how strong the claw-marked zombie was. It might have reached level 7 or even level 8. In front of the claw-marked zombie, these people were simply throwing their lives away. Soon his gaze landed on Immortality. He understood that it was a mysterious expert. But soon he thought that if the claw-marked zombie used the blood pool, its strength would be greatly increased. Most likely it would rise to level 10. No matter how strong the mysterious man was, it was impossible for him to be a match for a level 10 mutated zombie. What was going on? But then, a glimmer of hope rose in his heart. He brandished his genetic weapon and forced back the zombies within 100 meters. He turned around and shouted to the people at the village entrance. I'm sorry. But what can I do? They captured my parents and forced me to lure the mysterious expert over. I didn't want this to happen. At the entrance of the village, most of the people looked on coldly. Another hunter replied, That's right. So this is the reason why you betrayed your brothers? Lu Wang shouted as he fought. No matter what, it's all my fault. If I die, I die. I only beg you to take my parents away. Everyone was silent. No one responded. Lu Wang didn't hear any response. His voice was already hoarse. Are you going to watch 2 civilians die tragically in front of you? Is this what you call humanity? Everyone was still silent. Now that 2 civilians were surrounded by zombies, should they save them? Of course they should. But the sons of these 2 civilians betrayed their brothers in order to save them. They didn't hesitate to sacrifice more than 50 lives. They even lured the mysterious expert into a trap set by the zombies. If they went to save them, wouldn't they be too despicable? Repay evil with good. How should they repay good? But if they just watched 2 civilians get trapped by zombies and didn't go to save them, they might not feel at ease in the future. In the end, their eyes fell on the deputy leader Guojutao. As the deputy leader, Guojutao should be the one making the decision. But Guojutao's eyes fell on Immortality. Everyone suddenly understood, and their eyes fell on Immortality. If the mysterious expert didn't forgive Lu Wang and they rashly went to save them, wouldn't they offend the mysterious expert? Immortality naturally felt everyone's gaze. His clear and cold eyes didn't even spare Lu Wang a glance. He said indifferently, In the apocalypse, protecting yourself is the most important thing. Lu Wang was indeed a filial son. In order to save his parents, he crossed 500 kilometers of zombies and mutated beasts in the wilderness. Most people probably couldn't do it. But for his parents, he betrayed his brothers. To put it bluntly, it was selfish. For such people, he naturally wouldn't save them. Hearing Mo Shi's words, everyone put away their thoughts of saving them. Lu Wang's bloodshot eyes were filled with despair when he saw that no one had the slightest intention to save them. He roared hoarsely, "If you don't save my parents today, I won't let you go even if I die and become a ghost." A moment later he was bitten by a strong mutated zombie on the back of his neck. With such injuries he killed 3 strong mutated zombies in a row. Finally, under the virus infection he couldn't hold on. 5 minutes later he turned into a zombie. And it was directly a level 4 strong mutated zombie. After turning into a zombie, he suddenly turned his head and looked at the people at the entrance of the village. Then he roared for the first time since he became a zombie. Roar dash, he rushed towards Mo Shi and the others. When the others saw Lu Wang turn into a zombie, they rushed over with red eyes. They were all secretly shocked. Mo Shi slightly moved his telekinesis. Bang, Lu Wang's head suddenly exploded into a cloud of blood mist. At the same time with Lu Wang's death, the other zombies also rushed towards Mo Shi and the others. Mo Shi slightly moved his telekinesis. Bang, those strong mutated zombies below level 5, and all the mutated zombies, their heads exploded at the same time. After his telekinesis reached level 8, he could already use this move to easily kill all the strong mutated zombies below level 5. In his estimation, when his telekinesis reached level 10, even if he encountered a level 10 strong mutated zombie, he could also easily use this move to kill it. Everyone in the rescue team saw this scene and they were all shocked. Even if this was not the first time they saw this move. But their hearts were still full of shock. After all, he didn't even need to move his fingers to kill so many strong and mutated zombies. This visual impact was too strong. Especially the 2 psychokinesis. With their telekinesis, it was a bit difficult to use this method to explode the heads of a few level 1 mutated zombies. The mysterious strong man exploded the heads of more than a dozen strong mutated zombies. They and the mysterious strong man were like heaven and earth. But Mo Shi didn't relax because of this. There were still 3 level 6 strong mutated zombies on the scene. These 3 level 6 strong mutated zombies, seeing this human standing still, exploded the heads of all the other strong mutated zombies. They were also scared. They looked at each other, let out a low roar, and then suddenly turned around at the same time and quickly fled. As they fled, they also let out a roar that shook the sky. Roar dash, not far from the village there was a small town. There were also many zombies in the town wandering in the snow. Some of the zombies heard the roars and responded, "That's right. Roar dash." Chapter 65. The 3 level 6 strong mutated zombies, after seeing Mo Shi explode the heads of the other zombies, showed fear in their gray eyes. They retreated quickly. At the same time they roared at the sky. In the eyes of others, this was just the roar of a wild beast. But Mo Shi could understand that they were shaking the corpses. Translated, it was a cloud-piercing arrow. Thousands of troops came to meet. Mo Shi subconsciously raised his head and looked at the sky. Not far from the village there was a small town. The roar of zombies also came from the town. A moment later, thousands of zombies roaring like wild beasts, pounced towards the village. They rampaged, the snow behind them rising. It was a broken momentum. Through a dried-up forest. The trees were smashed into pieces. Soon they came to the entrance of the village and surrounded Mo Shi and the others. Roughly estimated, there were 4,000 to 5,000 zombies. Most of them were mutated zombies. As for the strong mutated zombies, there were more than 500 of them. But Mo Shi did not pay attention to these zombies at all. But from the beginning to the end, his eyes were fixed on the western entrance of the village. Over there. In a huge blood pool with a diameter of 50 meters. A blood-red giant zombie more than 50 meters long had already crawled out. This giant zombie was not in human form. It was in the form of a giant scorpion. It had 8 blood-red long legs. On both sides of its head there were 2 huge pincers. On the pincers there was a metallic luster. It was as if it could clamp the mountain and clamp the sea. Behind it was a long blood-red tail more than 30 meters long. At the tip of the long tail was a thick spike more than 5 meters long. On the head of the giant scorpion, there was a huge sarcoma with a diameter of 5 meters. If one looked carefully, there were 5 human faces in this huge sarcoma. These 5 human faces were somewhat blurry and distorted. But without exception they all revealed a sinister smile. the moment this huge monster appeared. At the entrance of the village, the members of the rescue team all changed their expressions. An extremely terrifying psychological pressure pressed down on them, causing them to fall to the ground almost instantly. In fact, the huge pressure originally made them have a strong urge to kneel down and submit. If they didn't kneel down and submit, it was as if they would be annihilated in the next moment. It was only the last bit of pride in the hunting group that prevented them from kneeling. Instead, he fell directly to the ground. Not to mention them, even someone as powerful as Immortality had the urge to kneel down at this moment. He really couldn't be blamed for his lack of willpower. It was because they had all been injected with the X2 virus enhancer. And this monster was like the ancestor of the virus. When they saw this monster, the X2 virus in their bodies seemed to be forcing them to submit to the ancestor. Immortality was a little angry. This blood pool was really too much. Every single one of them wants me to submit. Another one of them wants me to submit. Do you really think you're the virus ancestor? Anger surged in his heart. He extended his right hand to the right. He seemed to be waiting for someone to hand him a weapon. The next moment, a strange scene occurred. He saw the 4,000 to 5,000 zombies that had just rushed over. Whether it was ordinary zombies, mutated zombies, or strong mutated zombies, their bodies, starting from their heads, were rapidly melting. Even those level 6 strong mutated zombies couldn't escape. Their heads melted into blood and flowed down their bodies. Then it was their necks, shoulders, chests, waists, legs. Their entire bodies melted into blood and flowed on the ground. When the rescue team members saw this scene, they were all shocked. What kind of move was this? At this moment, they saw that the thousands of zombies had all turned into blood. It was definitely a river of blood. The next moment, an even stranger scene happened. The blood didn't seep into the ground. Instead, it quickly floated up. Then it gathered towards the same point. That point was Immortality's right hand that was stretched out. All the blood quickly gathered in his hand like iron filings meeting a magnet. Then it slowly condensed into a solid body. At first, it was only a small stick that was less than half a meter long. Gradually, as the blood continued to gather, the entire appearance of that thing was revealed. A long spear that was about 2 meters long. The long spear was completely blood red. On the body of the spear, there were fine scales that looked like dragon scales. From the shape of the protrusion on the body of the spear, one could clearly see dragon claws and dragon wings. The shape of the tip of the spear was a fist-sized dragon head. The dragon horns, the dragon mouth, and the dozens of barbs on the dragon head were all lifelike. The pair of dragon eyes were fiery red. And if one looked carefully, one could clearly see that there seemed to be flames burning in the pair of dragon eyes. The choice of the entire long spear was exaggerated and domineering. It gave people a feeling that it could swallow the world. At this moment, Immortality held the demon-devouring dragon spear in his hand and suddenly felt that his body seemed to have infinite energy. In his eyes, his gaze was like lightning. His entire body seemed to be emitting a supreme domineering, supreme majestic and irresistible domineering aura. The moment the long spear appeared, the surrounding people actually had the urge to worship it at the same time. They were also suffering. After worshipping that and worshipping this, there was no end to it. At this moment, the 50-meter-long giant scorpion saw that this mere human actually dared to provoke its majesty. Immediately, its anger rose. The 5 heads on the sarcoma on its head actually opened their mouths at the same time. They let out 5 roars of different styles. Roar, roar, hiss, meow. Then the pair of huge blood-red pincers instantly extended over 100 meters. As if it carried the power to destroy the heavens and the earth, it attacked Immortality. The 49 people of the rescue team were now pressed to the ground by the huge pressure, unable to move. Immortality shook his long spear. He used the dragon shadow step. With a light tap of his feet, he instantly jumped 1,000 meters high. He was in the air looking down at the giant scorpion. The demon-devouring dragon spear in his hand brazenly stabbed out. The long spear in the air actually extended over 100 meters in an instant. In the next moment, the entire body of the spear actually turned into a 100-meter-long blood-red dragon. The blood-red head was actually the size of a house. There were dozens of sharp barbs on the head. On the dragon's body, each blood-red scale was half a meter in diameter. Each of the 4 thick limbs was more than 10 meters long like a pillar. The huge tail that was more than 30 meters long was like a giant python. A pair of huge bat-like wings with a wingspan of nearly 100 meters. This blood-red dragon roared towards the sky. The dragon's roar resounded through a radius of tens of kilometers. Within these tens of kilometers, hundreds of beasts were shocked, and thousands of corpses were terrified. The snowflakes in the air seemed to have stopped. The clouds in the sky seemed to have been shaken apart. On the ground, the 40-odd humans lying on the ground barely raised their heads. The moment they saw this giant dragon, they only felt their bodies tremble. Endless fear had already drowned them. In the next moment, the 100-meter-long giant dragon retracted its wings. It swooped down towards the giant scorpion. Its speed was as fast as lightning. Its momentum was as fierce as thunder. The spear was like a dragon? No, this was the spear turning into a dragon. Chapter 66. In the sky, the 100-meter-long dragon swooped down brazenly. It went straight for the giant scorpion. The 50-meter-long ferocious giant scorpion was also trembling at this time. It retracted its pincers and hugged the huge sarcomatous head. On the 5 distorted faces of the sarcomatous head, 10 pairs of eyes were filled with horror. Its 8 legs were trembling. In the next moment, the dragon instantly swept over the head of the giant scorpion. It waved its 4 claws. Hiss! The 50-meter-long giant scorpion's body was instantly torn into several pieces. It was thrown far away. At the same time, the dragon soared into the sky again. It soared into the sky. In an instant, it disappeared into the heavy snow. Only blood splattered like a rain of blood. Mixed with the snowflakes, it fluttered down from the sky. The world seemed to have frozen. Time seemed to have stopped. Within dozens of kilometers, all the mutated beasts and zombies were still crawling on the ground. They did not dare to make a sound for a long time. In front of the mountain village, the 49 humans had long been scared out of their wits. They were the closest to the dragon. The dragon almost swept over their heads. That kind of violent and overbearing aura from ancient times. It made them unable to even think of resisting. Dragon, since ancient times, was synonymous with mystery and power. Whether it was the Western dragon or the Eastern dragon. Whether it was evil or good. They all had power that was far beyond the reach of humans. They had thought that the Western dragon was just a legend like the Eastern dragon. They had never dreamed that one day they would be able to see a dragon with their own eyes. This caused them to be filled with terror. Even though it was winter with heavy snow, the cold sweat on their foreheads still dripped down. At this moment, when they were still in endless fear. In the flying snow, Immortality floated down. He landed lightly on the snowy ground. He said lightly, "Let's go back." Then he turned around and walked slowly along the snowy road. Behind him, a trail of lonely footprints was left. It was not until now that everyone came back to their senses. Looking at Immortality's back, they were all shaken to the core. They knew that the mysterious expert was very strong, but they did not expect him to be so strong. A moment later, everyone's Adam's apple squirmed. "Deputy Commander, is that a real dragon?" "Vice Commander, are there really giant dragons in this world?" Deputy Commander Guijutao shook his head blankly. He didn't know. But he knew what to do. He retracted his gaze and scanned everyone sternly. He said, "Let me remind you again. Everything about the mysterious expert is to be buried in your stomachs. When you return to the base, don't go near the corpse farm. Act as if nothing happened. The mysterious expert likes peace and quiet." Everyone's heart trembled. Yes. After that, they did not immediately move. Instead, they waited until Immortality was 2 kilometers away from them before they started moving forward. This was because they knew that the mysterious expert did not like to be disturbed. At this moment, Immortality was happy that those people didn't follow him. Actually, he was also deeply shocked in his heart. He knew better than anyone that it was not a real dragon. Instead, it was the demon-devouring dragon spear that was condensed from the flesh and blood of zombies. It was just that this energy dragon was too real, so everyone thought that it was a real dragon. However, even if it was just an energy dragon, Immortality could feel the strength of this dragon. To be honest, with his current strength he was far from being able to block that attack. One could only imagine how powerful a real dragon would be if it were to appear. A few days ago when he used his genetic weapon to kill the giant. This demon-devouring dragon spear was many times stronger. And one must know that the more zombies and mutated beasts that condensed the demon-devouring dragon spear, the stronger the demon-devouring dragon spear. If there were more zombies and mutated beasts, how terrifying would that attack be? What made Immortality feel the most incredulous was that after such a terrifying attack, he did not feel the slightest bit of weakness. It was as if the power used in that attack did not belong to him at all. The things that he got from signing in at the blood pool were indeed different. This reminded Immortality of the map again. If he signed in at the Dragon Ruins, the things that he signed would probably be even more powerful than this demon-devouring dragon spear. The next day went very smoothly. It seemed that because of the dragon's roar, all the zombies and mutated beasts obediently stayed in their nests and did not come out to cause trouble. Emoshur and the others returned to the base smoothly. When they were about to reach the base, Emoshur left the others far behind and quickly flew over the base's city wall. At this time in the zombie field in Area A, Happy was feeding the zombies for Emoshur. Crippled Old Lee was holding a cup of steaming hot water and gently blowing on it a few times. He drank a mouthful. Immediately he felt his whole body warm up. He looked at the snow flying in the sky and asked, "Little Emo hasn't returned yet?" Happy turned his head, smiled slightly and shook his head. Old Lee said, "That kid, where did he go crazy? It's been almost half a month." Happy shook his head, indicating that he did not know. Old Lee said, "Why don't I talk to the leader and ask someone to look for him? Don't let anything happen to him." Happy quickly turned around and shook his head. Seeing this, Old Lee knew that Happy must know something. However, since Happy was unwilling to say, he did not ask any more. Moreover, Little Emo had become more and more mysterious recently. He asked them to inject some medicine and he suddenly disappeared for more than 10 days. However, since Happy seemed to know where Emoshur went, then he was not so worried. As long as nothing happened to him, it was fine. An old man like him did not need to meddle in the affairs of the young people. But then he asked again, "By the way, Happy, have you thought about what I told you?" Happy blushed slightly when she heard that. She lowered her head. After a moment, she raised her head again. She looked at Old Lee with sparkling eyes and shook her head. Old Lee understood what Happy meant. "I know that you think that you can't speak and that you're not worthy of Little Emo. You're thinking too much. We're all zombie rearers. Who's looking down on who? Besides, you're so beautiful. You're more than enough for him. If he were to marry you, not only would his ancestral graves be smoking, they would be on fire." A bright smile appeared on Happy's face. But then the smile slowly turned into a bitter smile. She knew that Brother Emo was not an ordinary zombie rearers. He was a hunter. He might even be a mysterious powerhouse. How could she be worthy of him? Just as she thought of that, a voice came from the door. "Old Lee, are you bad-mouthing me again when I'm not around?" Happy, stay away from Old Lee in the future. Don't be led astray by him. When Happy heard the voice, she immediately raised her head. The moment she saw Emoshur, her heart beat faster. Then, the smile on her face became as bright as a flower again, and she quickly went up to him. She kept gesturing with her hands. Emoshur looked at Happy's slightly red face and watery eyes. He smiled and said, "Happy, you don't actually need to gesture. When I see your eyes, I know what you want to say. Your eyes can speak." Happy was a little shy but also a little happy. A pair of eyes that seemed to be able to speak looked at Emoshur, and his gaze flickered. Emoshur rubbed Happy's head and said with a smile, "Don't worry. I'm fine. I'm very healthy." Happy's hair was messed up, but he nodded happily. When Old Lee saw this, he laughed and said, "Little Emo, if you become rich in the future, don't forget to make us happy." Emoshur also laughed and said, "Don't worry. Even if I forget about you, I won't forget about Happy." Old Lee was an honest person. He did not know how to joke. He only said, "It's fine if you forget about me. As long as you're happy." Chapter 67. 67. Half a year of check-in. Level 10 Psychokinesis. That night, Emoshur returned to his residence. Lying on his bed, he yawned. He hadn't slept on a bed for more than 10 days. He missed this bed so much. Resting his head on his hands, he sighed. He was finally back. It was so comfortable in the base. If he didn't have anything to do in the future, it would be better to go out less. Checking in at the base, feeding the pigs and raising the zombies. It was much better than fighting to the death outside. At the same time, the 49 rescue team members also returned to the base. At this time, the deputy commander, Guijutao, was making a report in the base chief's office. He told the base chief that Lu Wang betrayed them and led them into the zombie encirclement. He also said that the mysterious powerhouse saved them and cleared the zombies in front of them. Finally, he said, "If it wasn't for the mysterious powerhouse, our entire rescue team would have lost more than just one psychokinesis." Of course, he didn't say who the mysterious powerhouse was. Nor did he say that they had seen the mysterious powerhouse. After hearing this, the base chief lit a cigarette silently. After a moment of silence, he exhaled a puff of smoke and said, "In the apocalypse, people's hearts are scarier than zombies." Guijutao felt the same way. After a while, the base chief said, "We have to be more vigilant in the future. We have to be more careful about those exiles. Yes, Chief. The chief said again, announce this matter and let the whole base know. At the same time, let everyone know the contribution of the mysterious powerhouse. The mysterious powerhouse doesn't need our gratitude, but we can't not be grateful. Wu Jutao nodded, yes, Chief. Therefore, in the next few days, everywhere he went, he heard discussions about the mysterious powerhouse. In the cafeteria by the warehouse on the guard tower, Emosher's ears were getting calluses from hearing so much. When he returned to the zombie farm, Old Li was still nagging in his ears. This mysterious powerhouse is really a savior. I thought that I would never see the hope of the world returning to normal. But the mysterious powerhouse gave me a glimmer of hope. Emosher shook his head helplessly. Old Li, can you say something else? It's been 3 days now. Every day there's been a mysterious expert. Aren't you annoying? Old Li rolled his eyes at Emosher. You brat, you don't know what's good for you. You're just saying that in a corpse-raising field. If I had told them earlier. Old Li was an honest man. He couldn't think of any words. At this moment the leader walked in. He added, if I had told them earlier, I'm afraid you would have passed the 7th day. Emosher was too lazy to argue with them. Happy, on the other hand, had a brilliant smile on his face. She loved watching the two of them bicker. Moreover, she now knew that Brother Emo could very well be that mysterious expert. Under such circumstances, watching the leader bicker with Brother Emo gave her a strange feeling. The following days were peaceful again. Other than working, Mosher was signing in every day. He was living a carefree life. Occasionally they would bump into the rescue team members on the road, and they would all nod at Emosher. His eyes were filled with sincere reverence. Emosher just nodded lightly. For 3 months, Emosher designated the rewards for signing in every day. At the same time he doubled the rewards. 11,000 evolution points every day. In 3 months he only spent a little more than 1 million. And the brain cell enhancer that he received every day had raised his telekinesis to the peak of level 8. On this day, after Emosher injected 10 brain cell enhancers, he could clearly feel that his telekinesis was about to break through. This made him look forward to it. After midnight that night, he signed another 10 brain cell enhancers. After injecting 2, he felt a warm current in his body rushing straight to his head. His eyes were clear and his spirit was greatly boosted. 5 minutes later, he felt his telekinesis instantly extend outwards. It had reached a radius of 900 meters. Within 900 meters, everything could be clearly seen as long as he scanned with his telekinesis. Phew! He exhaled a mouthful of turbid air. A smile appeared on his face. He had finally reached level 9. Level 9 telekinesis could detect a radius of 900 meters. He could control anything below 90 kilograms. In other words, he could lift the vast majority of people with his telekinesis alone. Psychokinesis telekinesis was very difficult to increase. Other psychokinesis could only increase by 1 level after a few years or even more than 10 years. And Emosher had injected more than 900 strengthened brain cell enhancers in these 3 months. He had directly increased by 1 level. He had jumped to level 9 psychokinesis. With his current telekinesis, he could easily kill any hunter below level 8, including level 8 hunters. In other words, all the mutated beasts and strong mutated zombies below level 8 that he knew of, he could instantly kill them with just a thought. However, Emosher's heart was only slightly excited for a moment. Then he regained his calmness. Now that his telekinesis had reached a very terrifying level, but the strength of his body was a little weak compared to his telekinesis. It didn't match. Since young, the teachers taught us that we had to grasp both language and mathematics, and both hands had to be strong. If the telekinesis increased and the strength of the body couldn't keep up, he would have to spend more energy on defense during battle. Think about it, if the body was strong enough. When the enemy's attack hit his body, Emosher wouldn't have the slightest reaction. Then he would use his tyrannical telekinesis to sweep across. What kind of scene would that be? Therefore, in the next half a year, Emosher didn't increase his telekinesis anymore. Instead, he used all the sign-in opportunities to sign Titan Dragon Gene Enhancers. Emosher signed 10 strengthened Titan Dragon Gene Enhancers every day. The improvement of a hunter was relatively easier than the improvement of psychokinesis. In just half a month he broke through to level 6 hunter. Then he broke through one after another. In 2 months, Emosher's level had reached level 8 hunter. After another month of sign-in, he had reached the peak of level 8 hunter. On this day, after another injection, Emosher's heart skipped a beat. After another injection he should be able to break through. That night, just after midnight, the sign-in opportunity refreshed. He directly said in his mind, System: the sign-in reward is doubled. Specify the strengthened Titan Dragon Gene Enhancer. The system instantly replied, frowny face, this sign-in will cost 11,000 evolution points. Please confirm if you want to sign in. Sure, confirm. Sign-in successful. Sign-in reward, Titan Dragon Gene Enhancer X10. Sure moved his mind and took out all 10 gene enhancers. He injected 7 of them in a row. When he injected the 8th one, his body temperature began to rise rapidly. Sure knew that he was about to break through. He immediately put down the 8th gene enhancer in his hand. His telekinesis enveloped his entire body and probed into it. He carefully observed every cell, every drop of blood, every piece of muscle, and every change in bone. Chapter 68. Sure concentrated his telekinesis in his body. Every drop of blood, every piece of muscle, and every piece of bone in his body was rapidly growing stronger. His blood flowed faster, his muscles became fuller, and his bones became stronger. He could even feel that there was energy flowing within his muscles. His body temperature began to rise rapidly. In just 5 minutes, it reached a level that he could barely bear. But after a while, his body temperature quickly returned to normal. Sure looked at the back of his right hand. There was another slight bulge. He knew that this was the Sky Splitter Dragon Spear. Every time he leveled up, the Sky Splitter Dragon Spear mark on his arm would increase by 1. Now there were already 9 marks. Phew, Sure exhaled. He looked at his attributes in his mind. Name, Sure. Level 9 Hunter, level 9 Psychokinesis. Evolution path, Titan Dragon. He had finally reached both level 9. Now Sure's physical strength and telekinesis had greatly increased. Now, even if he didn't use telekinesis, genetic martial arts, or the demon-devouring dragon spear, he could still fight against a level 10 hunter. If he used telekinesis, he could easily defeat level 10 hunters, level 10 strong mutant beasts, and level 10 strong mutant zombies. Of course, the prerequisite was that there couldn't be too many opponents. If there were 100 or even 1,000 level 10 strong mutant beasts, he would have to retreat temporarily. So, Sure planned to use the next 6 months to reach level 10 psychokinesis and level 10 hunter. So, in the following days, Sure continued to raise pigs and zombies every day. It was peaceful and comfortable. As for the hunter group, they would still clear the zombies outside the base regularly. Occasionally they would go further and explore the base's surroundings. This was to prevent a large-scale zombie siege like last time. Although they knew that there was a mysterious elite in the base, they still had to be careful. They couldn't rely on the mysterious elite for everything. One day, when the hunter group sent people to explore the periphery again, they met a group of elites in the wilderness. According to these elites, they were from base C10. There were 55 of them. 50 hunters and 5 psychokinesis. Every one of them was at least a level 5 hunter. The strongest among them was a level 8 hunter. Most of the psychics were at least level 4. The strongest one had a telekinesis of level 6. Everyone in the hunting group was very surprised. After all, the strongest hunter in their hunting party was only a level 3 hunter led by their leader. The only 2 patients with psychokinesis were only level 3 psychokinesis. Surprised, the hunting group decided to bring them back to the base. However, after the previous lesson, they still asked one more question before bringing these people back to the base. You don't want us to go with you to save people, do you? The people of base C10 laughed heartily. They all shook their heads. The level 6 psychokinesis in the lead was their captain. Her name was Lun Yen. He smiled brightly and said, "When our base was hunting zombies, we accidentally found a way to make hunters and psychokinesis stronger quickly. That's why the hunters and psychics in our base are much stronger than the other bases. This gave us hope to restore human civilization. However, the number of hunters and psychokinesis in base C10 is too small. No matter how strong we are, we can't restore human civilization to what it used to be. So the leader of the base sent us to contact other bases and teach them how to become stronger quickly." At this point, the captain paused and said, "We went to base C9 before. We didn't expect that the zombies had already taken over base C9 and it was reduced to ruins." At this point, his eyes dimmed a little. A team member next to him said, "There are not many survivors left. Now there aren't many humans left alive. Without the lips, the teeth will feel cold. Every time a base is taken, humans will be closer to extinction." Everyone was a little depressed when they heard this. The captain, Lun Yen, spoke again. "So we rushed to base C1 as fast as we could. The zombies are getting stronger and stronger. We have to tell all the bases how to become stronger as soon as possible. Humans are now a community with a shared future. Only when all the bases become stronger can we defeat the zombies. Thus, we can stop the real apocalypse. The body hunters were all shocked when they heard this. During their recent exploration, they had indeed found that there were more and more strong mutated zombies. If humans didn't become stronger quickly, it wouldn't be long before the 58 bases left in the world were taken over one by one. When that time came, they would usher in the real extinction. Therefore, the exploration team brought these strong people back to the base. Their arrival made the entire base begin to rejoice, especially after knowing that they had a way to make psychokinesis and hunters quickly become stronger. The leader of the base naturally received them personally. The level 6 psychokinesis captain didn't waste much time after seeing the leader of the base. After introducing himself, he took out a small bottle and a notebook. Inside the bottle was a bright red liquid. He opened his mouth and said, "We accidentally came across a very strange zombie. It should be a zombie that was infected after the virus mutated. We took a blood sample from his blood. Through research, our base laboratory found that this blood has a strong effect on psychokinesis and hunters." Then he pointed at the notebook and said, "Our base's scientists have already memorized the program of the enhancement agent. They said that as long as the researchers from other bases see the blood sample and their notes, they will soon be able to develop the enhancement agent." The leader of the base was delighted when he heard this. He immediately sent the blood sample and the notebook to the base laboratory. After the laboratory scientists identified it, they found that this blood did indeed have the effect of improving psychokinesis and hunter's strength. They then conducted an in-depth study of the program in the notebook. Then all the researchers became excited. With this program, they would be able to produce the first bottle of enhancement agent in just a month. When this news came out, the entire base was in an uproar again, especially those psychokinesis and hunters. In the past few years, they had clearly felt that it was getting harder and harder to improve. Now that they knew that they could quickly improve their strength, how could they not be excited? At that moment, the laboratory began to research the first bottle of enhancement agent. As for the 55 people from base C10, they were arranged by the leader to stay in the hunting group. This stay lasted for 3 days. During these 3 days, these people were very enthusiastic. From time to time, they would guide the members of the hunting group in their training. After all, they were strong people. Many things like enlightenment were very useful to the members of the hunting group. However, no one expected that a sudden change would happen that night. Chapter 69. The visitors from base C10 didn't affect Immortality at all. He still lived a leisurely life every day. Every night after midnight, he would spend 11,000 evolution points to sign out 10 enhanced brain cell enhancers. He was aiming for level 10 psychokinesis. Of course, he looked relaxed, but he was still a little worried. What kind of existence was the king that the 2 strong variant zombies spoke of? The clawed zombie from before, after transforming into 3 heads and 6 arms, had already reached level 10. Then, the existence that it called king must have already surpassed level 10 strong variant zombies. Thinking like this, Immortality felt that it was urgent for him to increase his strength. However, his increase in strength wasn't like the other psychokinesis and hunters who continuously trained to increase their strength. He only needed to sign in every day and inject the enhancers. So on the surface, he gave people the impression that he was very relaxed. He naturally knew about the 50 people that came from the base. But he wasn't too interested in them. With his current strength, he could easily deal with the strongest level 6 psychic and level 8 hunter in the group. That night, after signing in for another injection, Immortality yawned and fell asleep. At the same time in the hunting group. On the first floor of Building 1. The level 6 psychokinesis from base C10 called Lunyan. His telekinesis moved slightly. It spread to the room of the level 8 hunter in their team. The level 8 hunter felt a slight pain in his head. He immediately turned over and got off the bed. He observed from the window for a moment, then carefully went out. He came to Lunyan's room. The room was dark. After the level 8 hunter entered the room, he quietly opened the curtains and carefully observed the movements outside. The level 6 psychokinesis Lunyan smiled and said in a low voice, "Don't worry, my telekinesis can detect a radius of 600 meters. Within this range, no one will notice your arrival." The level 8 hunter carefully put down the curtains and said, "Captain, I'm worried about being detected by their psychokinesis." Lunyan chuckled and said in disdain, "Both of their psychics are only level 3 and they're only at level 3. It's impossible for them to detect anything within the range of my telekinesis. Furthermore, they know that I'm a level 6 psychokinesis. Naturally, they wouldn't dare to casually investigate our place. The level 8 hunter nodded, then continued. Even so, we still have to be careful. Lun Yen chuckled and shook his head. You're good at everything, but you're too cautious. Haven't we already figured it out over the past 3 days? The strongest commander in their base is only a level 2 hunter. So what if their entire hunting squad comes? The level 8 hunter nodded and said, yes. Captain, you're right. I was being too careful. Then, should we do it tonight? Lun Yen smiled. Of course. The level 8 hunter hesitated for a moment. But today I heard someone in his base say that there is a mysterious expert. One move was enough to destroy 40 buildings in a residential area. Furthermore, he had exploded the heads of over 1,000 zombies with one move. He even used his telekinesis to form a blood-red tornado and annihilated millions of zombies. Lun Yen chuckled. Do you believe that? The level 8 hunter shook his head. They're just bragging. Who is both a hunter and a psychokinesis? Moreover, even the current me is far from being able to destroy an entire residential area with a single move. As for killing millions of zombies, even someone as strong as you can't do that. Captain Lun Yen shrugged. So what are you worried about? The level 8 hunter thought for a moment and said, Captain, before we left, the leader of the base told us to be careful. Why don't we wait for a few more days and figure out the situation of base C1? Captain Lun Yen was getting impatient. He waved his hand. We can wait, but can the leader afford to wait? Can the 120,000 people of base C10 afford to wait? The level 8 hunter's expression changed slightly. Captain Lun Yen said, don't say anything else. There's no need to say any more. Go over now and kill their leader. Leave those 2 psychokinesis to me. Arrange your men. Once we make a move, the rest of the team will move together and kill the 100 or so hunters as quickly as possible. Seeing that the captain had made up his mind, the level 8 hunter didn't have any other thoughts. He said with a firm gaze, yes, Captain. 3:15 p.m. The bright moon hung high in the sky. Most of the members of the hunter group had already entered a deep sleep. In the entire hunter group, only the 5 hunters who were on night duty were chatting on the sentry tower at the entrance. At this moment, bang, there was a muffled sound. The head of a night watchman suddenly exploded. Blood splattered on the faces of the other 4 people. The 4 of them were shocked and hurriedly wanted to sound the alarm. Bang 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 bang. 4 muffled sounds rang out at the same time. The heads of the 4 people also exploded into a cloud of blood mist. The psychokinesis near the sentry tower was originally in a deep sleep. But at this moment he suddenly opened his eyes. However, in the next moment, bang, his head also exploded into a cloud of blood mist. Then, the head of the other psychokinesis also exploded. In the room, Lun Yen had killed these people in just a few breaths, including the 2 level 2 psychokinesis. But he acted as if he had done nothing. To him, a level 6 psychokinesis, the 2 level 2 psychokinesis were just ants. At the same time, at the door of Captain Yang Kang's bedroom, Yang Kang had already fallen asleep. As the captain, besides training hard every day, he had a lot of work to do. Every night, he went to bed at 1 o'clock and woke up at 6 o'clock. He only slept for 5 hours. So in these 5 hours he slept like a log. At this moment, the level 8 hunter gently twisted his right hand. Click. The door lock was twisted out of shape. He quietly pushed the door open and entered the room. His right hand clenched into a fist and stretched out toward Yang Kang. A bone spike the size of a chopstick slowly stretched out between the index and middle fingers of his right hand. At a certain moment, whoosh, this sharp bone spike instantly flew out. Chi, with a soft sound, it nailed into Yang Kang's heart. Yang Kang, who was sleeping soundly, suddenly opened his eyes. However, in the next moment, Chi, another bone spike instantly entered his forehead and came out from the back of his head. The last trace of Yang Kang's gaze was filled with shock. With Captain Yang Kang dead, the level 8 hunter was instantly relieved. He strode out of Yang Kang's room. At the same time, the other hunters saw him walk out. They immediately rushed into the rooms of the other hunters at base C1 and began to attack. The more than 100 hunters at base C1 were basically only level 1 and level 2 hunters. How could they be a match for hunters above level 5? In just a few seconds, all 50 hunters in the hunting squad were slaughtered to the last man. Thank you to Lonely Me for the 588 yuan tip. Thank you, brother. Chapter 70. No one in Base C1 had expected that the hunters in the hunting squad would be slaughtered in less than half a minute. All of this happened so suddenly that no one could react in time. As for many hunters, they had already died while they were still asleep. At this moment, only the hunters were left in the hunting squad. They heard the commotion and rushed out of the courtyard to check. However, the first batch of people who rushed to the courtyard were all killed in a few seconds. Their heads exploded one after another with a series of bangs. 10 seconds later, 100 people had fallen to the ground and become headless corpses. The remaining people were all shocked and didn't dare to walk out of the courtyard. At the same time, Lun Yan chuckled. He slowly came to the courtyard. He glanced at the hundreds of headless corpses on the ground and the blood all over the ground. He raised his head and looked at the bright moonlight. He sighed in his heart. What a beautiful moon. Then he slowly opened his mouth and said in a clear voice, "Those who surrender will not be killed. Now those who surrender, raise your hands and come out obediently." After a while there was no response. All the hunters in the hunting squad didn't understand why such a sudden change had happened and were a little confused. Secondly, they were furious that these guys were so cruel and had killed so many of their hunters. Naturally, no one responded. Lun Yan smiled slightly and said, "No one responded? Very well, then let's start with the first room." Then he nodded at the level 8 hunter. The level 8 hunter waved at the other hunters. Those hunters immediately rushed into room 101 of the male dormitory building like wolves and tigers. "Ah, no, you!" Suddenly there was a scream from room 101. However, this scream only lasted for less than 10 seconds. Then there was silence. The smell of blood drifted out from the window of room 101. Lun Yan smiled slightly and said, "I'll say it one last time. Those who surrender, raise your hands and come out slowly." After a while there was still no response. Lun Yan nodded at the level 8 hunter again. Soon a few screams came from room 102. Then just like room 101 it was silent. In room 103, everyone looked at each other and finally gritted their teeth and slowly walked out of the room. Then the hunters in rooms 104, 105, and 106 walked out one after another. Soon there were more than 500 hunters standing in the courtyard. There were more than 1,000 hunters living in the hunting squad, and the rest were scattered around the base. In the female dormitory, the female hunters also came out one after another. They knew that if they didn't come out when facing such a strong enemy, they would definitely die. But now, as long as they conserved their strength. Then, when the mysterious expert appeared, these fellows would eventually be punished. However, they were all thinking in their hearts. With such a huge commotion here, why hadn't the mysterious expert appeared yet? Only a few people who had been to Base C9 knew that the mysterious man lived in the corpse farm in Area A. As for the hunting group's headquarters, it was more than 10 kilometers away from the corpse farm in Area A. Not to mention that the news hadn't spread yet. Even if he did, it would take some time for the mysterious expert to arrive. So they quietly comforted the people around them. "Let's get out first and save our lives. The mysterious expert will naturally appear." Everyone's spirits rose when they heard this. He whispered, "Yeah, the mysterious expert will take care of him. The mysterious expert will be here soon. If we make meaningless resistance now, it will be equivalent to dying in vain." However, among all the hunters there was only one exception. This person was a female hunter. But she had short hair. Her short hair pointed to the sky. It was like the spikes of a hedgehog. She was the short-haired girl who had gone to the dam to protect the corpse farmers and researchers. At this moment, her 5 roommates were planning to walk out like the others. But when they turned their heads, they found that the short-haired girl had no intention of going out. One of her roommates whispered, "Hot girl, let's go." As she spoke, she pulled the girl's hand. The short-haired girl puffed out her chest and looked through the window at Lun Yan in the courtyard. She said coldly, "The word, surrender, doesn't exist in my dictionary." Her roommate tugged at her arm. "Hot girl, do you want to die?" The short-haired girl shook off her roommate's arm, anger rising in her eyes, and said angrily, "I'd rather die standing than live kneeling." The roommate persuaded, "Let's hold on a little longer. Maybe God." However, the hot chick pushed her roommate out. Then with a bang she slammed the door. "Surrender? Even if it's just for a second, it's still my humiliation." Her roommates were all stunned. Hot girl usually had a bad temper, so she was called Hot Girl. Moreover, she was careless like a rough man. Therefore no one liked to talk to her. But at this time, the most unyielding person in the entire dormitory was actually her. However, wasn't it too stupid to give up her life for just a moment of surrender? Lun Yan's psychic power detected this scene and smiled slightly. Mysterious expert? Interesting. Bring her out for me. At this time he already believed that there was a mysterious expert in base C1. But in his opinion there was no need to worry. He didn't believe that there was someone stronger than him in psychic power. He also didn't believe that there was someone who could be both a hunter and psychokinesis. Therefore he believed that the so-called mysterious expert was at most a slightly stronger psychokinesis. He used some tricks and played some tricks to be regarded as a savior. In today's world, saviors are really cheap. A mocking smile appeared on his lips. At this moment, a hunter kicked open the door and pulled the hot girl out by her hair. Hot girl wanted to resist, but she was only a level 5 hunter. How could she resist? Her eyes were burning with anger as she roared, "Let go of me!" As she spoke, she grabbed the hunter's wrist with both hands and shook her head violently. Rip, her short hair, along with a large piece of her scalp, was torn off by her own hands. Her head was immediately dripping with blood, and a few streaks of blood crawled down her face. Everyone was aghast when they saw this. Even some of the hunters from base C10 were slightly moved. Seeing this, Lun Yan clapped his hands with a hint of mockery. "Good. What a fierce girl. Tomorrow at the guillotine I'll start with you." Then he waved his hand. The hunter immediately used a chain to tie the hot girl up tightly and brought her away. Then Lun Yan said to the level 8 hunter, "Bring 3 psychokinesis and capture the chief of the base." Yes. The level 8 hunter immediately brought a dozen hunters and 3 psychokinesis and left. After more than 40 minutes they had already brought the chief of the base back. Lun Yan looked at the chief of the base whose hands were tied up and smiled slightly. "Chief, are you surprised? Are you surprised?" There was no shock or fear in the chief's eyes. There was only a hint of regret. In fact, after the incident with Lu Wang, he had been very careful. This was especially true for outsiders. That was why he arranged these people from base C10 to be in the Hunter Group's department. His idea was that the Hunter Group's department was the safest place in the entire base C1. If these people made any moves, the more than 1,000 people in the Hunter Group's department would be able to take them down immediately. However, he had underestimated the strength of a level 6 psychokinesis. Chapter 71. Under the moonlight. The base chief's face was bruised and swollen. But he wasn't afraid of Lun Yan. Only annoyance. He had underestimated level 6 psychokinesis. And he thought that even if these people were up to no good, they wouldn't do it directly in the hunting group's headquarters. But he didn't expect that these people would be so unscrupulous. The amiable smile that seemed to have always been on his face had long since disappeared. He said, "I just want to know why?" Lun Yan smiled and said, "Chief, you're a smart man. You should know what's most important in this apocalypse." The base chief pondered for a moment, then said, "You're here to fight for resources?" Lun Yan smiled. "Chief, you're a smart man. Simply put, in the past year, level 9 and even level 10 mutant beasts and zombies have often appeared within 100 kilometers of our base. For survival reasons, our base chief ordered us to contact other bases and try to transfer all the humans there." The base chief said, "The other bases refused." Lun Yan nodded, a hint of viciousness flashing in his eyes. "Not only did they refuse, but they even ambushed us with a base. More than 30 hunters from our base and more than 500 civilians who were escorting them were all slaughtered." The base chief frowned. "So you're not here to negotiate but to rob us?" Lun Yan nodded. "I'll need your cooperation, base chief. Gather some representatives tomorrow. Tell them about the current situation. It's best if they accept us obediently." The base chief frowned slightly. But he didn't hesitate at all. He couldn't hesitate. If he hesitated for a second, more people would die. And he also knew that with the mysterious powerhouse around, these people would eventually be wiped out. Lun Yan seemed to have guessed the base chief's thoughts. He smiled and said, "I heard that there's a mysterious powerhouse in your base?" The base chief's heart skipped a beat. There was no answer. Lun Yan smiled. "If there really is, I'd like to see it tomorrow. I hope he won't be too scared." The next morning, 8 o'clock. It was summer. Although it was only 8 o'clock, the sun was already quite lethal. On the walls of the corpse-raising field, the Boston ivy seemed to have its head drooped, as if it had lost its vigor. Mosher had already fed the pigs and zombies. He was sitting under the grape trellis in the courtyard, chatting with Old Lee. The grapes were planted by Happy, and the trellis was also built by Happy. A gust of wind blew over. It was rather cool. Emo closed his eyes comfortably. Old Lee also yawned comfortably and said, "It's all thanks to Happy for this great pergola, or else, I don't know how I would have been able to get through this summer." Emo nodded. "Yes." Old Lee said, intentionally or otherwise. "Happy is really a good girl. Whoever marries her in the future will be blessed by their ancestors." Emo nodded again without even opening his eyes. "Yes." Old Lee saw that this guy didn't seem to have any intention of saying more. He thought to himself that he had to think of a way to provoke him. He could clearly see that both of them seemed to be interested in each other. But that layer of window paper just couldn't be broken. If he didn't resolve this matter, he would die of old age. At this moment, Emo heard a few urgent roars coming from the laboratory next door. "Everyone in the laboratory, go to the hunting group's department." The base's chief personally gave the order. Then a voice came from the gym. "Everyone, put down the things in your hands and go to the hunting group's department." Something happened. A moment later, a few hunters entered the corpse farm. The person in the lead was Lil Bean. It had been almost 10 years since Lil Bean left the corpse farm. She had never returned. But at this moment she suddenly ran in. Old Lee was an honest person. He didn't blame Lil Bean. At this moment, when he saw Lil Bean walking quickly, he quickly went up to her and asked, "Lil Bean? Did something happen?" Lil Bean nodded at Old Lee and said, "Uncle Lee." Old Lee was also surprised. Ever since Lil Bean left the corpse farm, he had met her a few times on the way. He took the initiative to greet her, but she ignored him. Later on, when they met on the way, he basically didn't dare to greet her. Why did Lil Bean come to the corpse farm today and even call him Uncle Lee? It had to be known that Lil Bean had never called him Uncle Lee when she was in the corpse farm. Lil Bean looked around the yard and didn't see Emo under the grape trellis. She asked, "Uncle Lee, is everyone in the corpse farm here?" Old Lee nodded, "Everyone is here." "What happened?" Lil Bean immediately raised her voice and said, "Something big happened. Last night, the hunting group's department was attacked. Almost all the hunters are dead." "What? What's going on?" Old Lee said in horror. The two hunters behind Lil Bean were impatient to talk to the corpse farmer. They said, "Why are you talking so much nonsense? You'll know when you get there." Lil Bean turned around and glared at the two hunters. Then she said to Old Lee, "Uncle Lee, it's those people from base C10. They have already captured the chief of the base and are forcing him to hand over the base. It's a long story. Anyway, I'll inform you first. You must tell everyone in the corpse farm to go." Old Lee was puzzled. "But, even if we from the corpses go, we won't be able to help." Lil Bean said, "It's precisely because you can't help that they want you to go. They want to establish their authority. If you can help, they probably won't dare to ask you to go." Then she reminded again solemnly, "No matter what, please tell everyone in the corpse farm to go." After saying that, she glanced at Emosher's room. Then she hurriedly left with the two hunters. After leaving the corpse farm, the two hunters were puzzled. "Deputy Captain, they're just corpse farmers. There's no need to inform them." Lil Bean glared at the two of them. "I used to be a corpse farmer too." The two of them saw that Lil Bean's mood didn't seem right. They looked at each other and didn't dare to say anything. In the corpse farm, Old Lee came to the grape trellis and said with a solemn expression, "How did this happen? Did you hear what Lil Bean said?" Emosher furrowed his brows slightly. If those people from base C10 killed others, he couldn't be bothered to care. As long as they didn't disturb his life. But without the protection of hunters, the base wasn't as safe as before. His leisurely check-in life would definitely be affected. Then he had no choice but to kill them. Thinking of this, he said to Old Lee, "Since the hunters said that everyone in the corpse farm will go, wouldn't it be bad if we don't go?" Old Lee nodded. "That's what I mean." "Then let's go check the corpse farm now and go immediately." Then the three people in the corpse farm carefully checked the corpse farm. After making sure that the zombies' chain was fine, they locked the door of the corpse farm. Then they quickly walked out of the corpse farm. Following the people in the laboratory and the gym, they went to the hunter group's headquarters. Along the way, other people came out of their homes, schools, repair shops, and warehouses. Lil Bean led the way in front, looking back from time to time to look for Emosher. But there were too many people, so he didn't see him for a while. In fact, those people from base C10 originally asked him to find some important people in important institutions. But he knew that he had to inform the mysterious strong man Emosher. Considering that Emosher didn't want to expose his identity, he notified all the residents of the institutions around the corpse farm. As for how Emosher would continue to hide his identity in the hall, that was not something he could consider. In short, he had done everything he could. The rest was up to Immortality. Chapter 72. The sun in July was scorching. However, no matter how scorching the sun was, it was still inferior to the human heart. Under the sun, Little Bean led tens of thousands of people forward slowly. Tens of thousands of people didn't look mighty. Instead, they gave people a sense of oppression. Someone in the crowd whispered, "What happened? What's going on? Why did you suddenly call everyone here?" Someone who knew a little bit about the situation said, "I heard that something big happened in the hunter group. All the hunters are dead. It was done by the people from base C10. The others heard it and couldn't believe it. That's impossible. Keep bragging." In the eyes of ordinary people, hunters were superhuman beings. In their eyes, hunters were so powerful that they were close to gods. He could easily destroy a building with a casual blow. But now all the hunters were dead. They couldn't believe it. At the same time, what was even more unbelievable was that the killers were from base C10. Weren't they here to deliver some blood? Didn't they say that they wanted to develop together? Someone thought of something and asked in a low voice, "Where's the mysterious master? Why didn't he do anything?" The others also whispered in agreement. "Yeah, this is related to the whole base. Why didn't the mysterious master do anything?" Someone immediately retorted, "This happened in the middle of the night, brother. Doesn't the mysterious master need to sleep? Besides, the mysterious master isn't the nanny of the hunter group. He can't keep an eye on the hunter group all the time." Everyone nodded. The person who spoke first felt everyone's gaze and didn't dare to say anything else. Hearing these people's words, Happy turned to look at Immortality. But Immortality didn't seem to hear it. She muttered in her heart, "Is Brother Mo the mysterious master?" More than 40 minutes later, they went out of the first line of defense and came to the hunter group's headquarters between the first and second lines of defense. There was a large open space at the entrance of the headquarters. There were all kinds of fitness equipment around the open space. In the middle of the open space was a huge playground that was several times bigger than an ordinary one. Normally, the hunters would train and spar on the field. But today, more than 1,000 hunters in the headquarters were escorted to the center of the playground. More than 200 corpses were placed next to them. More than 100 headless corpses belonged to the hunters. The rest were all hunters, including Regiment Commander Yang Kong. On the rostrum on the north side of the field, Lun Yin was smiling as he looked at the more than 1,000 hunters below. Beside him was the chief of the base. It seemed that the chief of the base was sitting on the chair as usual. However, there were 2 liver swellings on his face. Behind him, there were 2 hunters, one on his left and one on his right, watching over him. A moment later, Xiao Dou brought the 10,000 people to the field. When everyone saw the scene before them, although they were shocked, they did not dare to say anything. He was led by Little Bean to a place not far from the rostrum. On the rostrum, Lun Yin had a bright smile on his face when he saw the 10,000 people arrive. He opened his mouth and said, "I'm really sorry to disturb everyone." As a level 6 psychokinesis, as long as he was within the range of his telekinesis, everyone would be able to hear every word he said. He continued, "We only have one goal this time, to take over your base C1. Although his words were very calm, his tone was full of dominance. Then he pointed at the more than 1,000 hunters and the more than 100 hunters' corpses. He said, "It's very simple. Those who are obedient, stand up. Those who are disobedient, lie down." The more than 10,000 people were all shocked. The strongest people in base C1, the more than 100 hunters, were really dead. As for the over 1,000 corpse hunters, it was clear that they had surrendered. The remaining hunters, although in other parts of the base, had not come over yet. But the more than 2,000 people were just hunters. In front of the hunters and the powerful psychokinesis of base C10, what could they do? Moreover, even the chief of the base was in their hands. Lun Yin smiled brightly under the sun. He made an inviting gesture to the chief of the base next to him. He said, "Now let's invite the most respected chief to say a few words to everyone. All of you had better listen carefully. The chief's words are all true and meaningful. This is very educational." The chief of the base's face was gloomy. He slowly stood up. He straightened his chest. He raised his head. He stood proudly. After a while he said, "You can kill or torture them as you wish, but these people are innocent." Lun Yin smiled and shook his head. "Chief, don't worry. I'm not an executioner. These people will listen to you. You just have to move your mouth and make them behave. You will be good, I will be good, and everyone will be good." As he spoke, he made an inviting gesture again. Hearing this, the chief of the base frowned. He slowly came in front of the microphone. Then he slowly said, "Brothers and sisters, I, my Yangshi, am incompetent and have caused your lives to be threatened. I'm sorry." Lun Yin smiled and said, "Chief, since I was young, my father has taught me not to say any unnecessary nonsense. If I say anything, do you know what to do?" As he spoke, he gently rubbed his cheeks. "Use the sole of your shoe to slap your face." Before he finished speaking, the level 8 hunter next to him actually took off his shoe. He held the shoe in his hand and looked at the chief. When everyone saw this scene, anger rose in their hearts. This was completely insulting the chief of the base in public. "Chief, you've gone too far. Let the chief go." Lun Yin shrugged and said to the chief of the base, "My Yangshi. Chief, the children are not very obedient. Tell them. Remember, don't talk nonsense. Otherwise, the children won't like to hear it and I won't like to hear it either." The chief of the base, my Yangshi, looked at the more than 10,000 people below. After a moment of silence. At a certain moment, the dim light in his eyes slowly disappeared. His brows also slowly relaxed. He said, "This is the darkest moment since the establishment of our base. However, please believe that this is only the darkness before dawn. Soon the sun will shine on the earth. And the mysterious powerhouse will be the one who will tear open the curtain of darkness." After a few simple words, he turned his head. He looked straight at Lun Yin. Head high, chest out. Body straight like a spear. He was already prepared to be killed by Lun Yin. Everyone's heart was shaken. "The mysterious powerhouse." Someone suddenly yelled. "The mysterious powerhouse will definitely appear. He will definitely come." Seeing this, a ball of anger rose in Lun Yin's heart. These people were clearly like ants in front of him. At this moment, they had no intention of yielding. He wanted to kill these people to establish his authority. But he thought silently. The reason why these people dared to be so presumptuous. Obviously, it was the mysterious powerhouse that gave them hope. Only by killing the mysterious powerhouse in front of these people could they completely lose hope. Since that was the case, he wanted to see how strong this mysterious powerhouse was. However, the angrier he was, the brighter the smile on his face. His smile was as bright as spring flowers blooming. Clap, clap, clap. He clapped his hands and said, as expected of the chief of the base, "Well said. I've learned a lot. Actually, I haven't finished what I said just now. For those who are disobedient, my father will use the sole of his shoe to beat them, but I have my own way of doing it. Chief, I'll get someone to give you a demonstration. You have to look carefully." Turning his head, he said to the more than 10,000 people, "All of you watch carefully too." Then he waved his hand and said, "Bring that fierce woman up." Chapter 73. Bring that fierce girl up here. Lun Yin said with a smile. Soon the short-haired hot girl was brought up. She was carried by a hunter and thrown onto the rostrum. At the same time, another hunter carried a 2-meter-tall wooden stone cross and erected it on the rostrum. Lun Yin smiled brightly and glanced at everyone. Finally, his eyes fell on the chief and said, "This is how I deal with disobedient people." Then he nodded to the hunter next to him. The hunter immediately lifted the hot girl up and stretched out her arms to both sides, pressing her tightly against the wooden cross. Lun Yin's smile gradually became cruel. He used his telekinesis and a flying knife was suspended in the air. Then it quickly flew toward the hot girl. Bang! There was a muffled sound. The flying knife instantly pierced through the hot girl's right hand. It directly nailed her hand to the wooden cross. On the rostrum, more than 10,000 people were shocked. At the same time, anger rose. The hot girl's face instantly turned pale. However, not only did she not beg for mercy, she did not even scream. She gritted her teeth. He kept making gurgling noises from his mouth. Seeing this, the chief of the base, my Yangshi, growled. "Lun Yin, you're too cruel." Lun Yin's smile was as bright as a flower. He looked back at my Yangshi and agreed. "You're right. Since she doesn't want to surrender, I can only be cruel." Then 4 more flying knives flew out from his body. They slowly flew toward the hot girl. The hot girl's eyes were wide open. There was no fear on her face. Instead, she was full of anger. She cursed. "You pervert, kill me if you dare. If you don't kill me, you're not a man." Lun Yin heard this and the corner of his mouth twitched. Any man who heard such words would probably explode on the spot. But the smile on Lun Yin's face became even brighter. The flying knives increased their speed and were about to pierce the hot girl's feet, left hand and forehead. Emo sure sighed in his heart. There was actually such a pervert in the world. Then he used his telekinesis and was about to attack. After all, back at the dam, Hot Chick had protected him and Zombie Sister in name. But at this moment, a heart-wrenching scream suddenly came from the crowd. "Dad!" Everyone turned their heads to look at him. Lun Yin's flying knife also paused slightly. A 17 or 18-year-old girl rushed out from the crowd. He fell into the pile of hunter corpses beside him. Hugging Regiment Commander Yang Kang's corpse, he cried bitterly. Dad, wake up!" Everyone sighed inwardly when they saw this. It turned out that this girl was the daughter of Regiment Commander Yang Kang. About 10 years ago, Mo Shi had saved his family. At that time she was only an 8-year-old girl. Now that more than 10 years had passed, she was already a 17 or 18-year-old girl. She had just seen those flying daggers about to pierce into the hot girl's body. He couldn't bear to look at her, so he subconsciously turned his head away. In the end, he accidentally saw Yang Kang's corpse in the pile of corpses beside him. That was why she cried out. At this moment, when the others saw the girl lying on top of Yang Kang's corpse, they were all shocked. The leader of the hunting group was the strongest person in the entire base. He had actually been killed. On the rostrum, Lun Yin's eyes lit up when he saw the girl. He shouted, "Bring her up here." One of the hunters walked over immediately. He grabbed the girl's shoulder and lifted her up. The girl kept struggling, crying and yelling. Dad!" Because of too much grief, her voice was a little hoarse. But that hunter didn't relent at all. He grabbed the girl's shoulder and was about to bring her up to the rostrum. However, at this moment he suddenly felt a chill on his ankle. He looked down and suddenly felt his scalp tingle. He actually had goosebumps all over his body. He saw that his right ankle was tightly grabbed by a cold hand. And the owner of this hand was actually Yang Kang. He carefully looked at Yang Kang's chest and forehead. He saw that there was a chopstick-sized bloody hole in Yang Kang's chest and forehead. The bloody hole in his forehead went from his forehead to the back of his head. He was clearly dead. How could he move? Or rather, he didn't die at all. But how was this possible? His heart was pierced. His head was directly penetrated. How could he not die? He couldn't believe it. At the same time, he felt a chill in his heart. Did he see a ghost? Thinking of this, he suddenly lifted his right foot. But that ice-cold hand held onto his right foot tightly. So much so that his whole body was lifted off the ground. But Yang Kang, who didn't seem to have any consciousness, still didn't let go. Seeing this scene, the expressions of everyone present were all moved. Dad! Seeing that her father wasn't dead, Yang Kang's daughter immediately burst into tears. She kept struggling, wanting to rush to her father's side. On the rostrum, Lun Yin frowned slightly. He said to the hunter, "What are you waiting for?" That hunter immediately swung his leg. He threw Yang Kang far away. Then he grabbed his daughter and brought her up to the rostrum. Lun Yin looked Yang Kang's daughter up and down for a moment and couldn't help praising, "Good, good, good." His eyes flashed with excitement. Then he waved his hand and said, "Take her aside first. When we're done here, I'll have a good talk with her." "Dad, my dad isn't dead yet. Save him, please save him." Yang Kang's daughter knelt on the ground and begged bitterly. But Lun Yin didn't respond to her. He just reluctantly withdrew his gaze from her. Then his gaze fell on the short-haired hot girl. He smiled brightly. "I hate short-haired women the most in my life, and I hate disobedient short-haired women even more. Now let's continue." As he spoke, the 4 throwing knives had already approached the hot girl. They kept moving in front of her. At the same time, Lun Yin's gaze swept over the more than 10,000 people. He joked. "I heard that there's a mysterious expert in your base. If there is, shouldn't he show up? But he still hasn't shown up. Isn't the so-called mysterious expert too cowardly?" He wanted to humiliate their so-called mysterious expert in front of everyone. He wanted to completely shatter the hope in their hearts. The smile on his face became wider and his voice became louder. "Mysterious expert, listen carefully. If you're still a man, stand out. Otherwise, from now on I'll kill one person every second." At this point, he signaled to a hunter with his eyes. "Let's begin." That hunter immediately walked into the crowd. Without saying anything, he stretched out his hand and slapped down on a middle-aged woman. The surrounding people all exclaimed. How terrifying was a hunter's strength. With this slap, this woman didn't even have the qualifications to become minced meat. She would probably be directly smashed into meat paste. Just as the crowd exclaimed, "Rip!" the hunter's body instantly split into several pieces. He was thrown far away in all directions. At this moment, the smile on Lun Yan's face suddenly froze. Chapter 74. That hunter was about to kill that woman. But in the next moment there was a tearing sound. He had already been torn into several pieces, flying far away. Everyone present exclaimed in surprise. But in the next moment they reacted. A mysterious expert. In base C10, all the hunters' expressions changed. They didn't see anyone make a move. A hunter was suddenly torn apart just like that. He didn't even have the time to scream. This scene was too strange. One had to know that this was a level 5 hunter. His body was far stronger than ordinary people. To tear a level 5 hunter apart, one would need at least the strength of a level 6 hunter to do that. But in this situation, it was obvious that psychokinesis had made a move. But how was that possible? If a psychokinesis was strong enough, it wouldn't be a problem to detonate a hunter's head. But it was impossible to detonate a hunter's head. After all, even someone as strong as their captain Lun Yan couldn't detonate a hunter's head with just telekinesis. Not to mention tearing a hunter apart. If it could really be done, how strong would the psychokinesis be? On the rostrum, the bright smile on Lun Yan's face suddenly froze. As a level 6 psychokinesis, he knew how difficult it was to tear apart a body with telekinesis. Psychokinesis was strong because telekinesis was invisible and immaterial, and couldn't be defended against. If one controlled flying daggers, they could come and go without a trace. As for the power formed by telekinesis, it wasn't very strong. Level 6 psychokinesis could only control objects within 60 kilograms. With this kind of power, it was impossible to tear apart a normal person. Not to mention tearing apart a hunter whose body was hundreds or thousands of times stronger than a normal person. But now that level 5 hunter had been torn apart so easily, it could be seen how terrifying the telekinesis of psychokinesis was. It was probably far beyond level 10 psychokinesis. It was an existence on another level. Because of this, the smile on Lun Yan's face froze. Tearing, just as he hadn't come back to his senses. Another hunter's body was instantly torn into several pieces. He flew far away. Under the sun, only fresh blood was left. Tearing, 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 the sound of cloth being torn could be heard continuously. One by one the hunters were torn apart. It didn't matter if it was a level 5 or level 6 hunter. Or a level 7 hunter. No one was spared. The eyes of the level 8 hunter under Lun Yan's command were filled with terror. The mysterious expert had made his move. What those people said was true. That mysterious expert was actually so powerful. He was so strong that he couldn't even imagine it and couldn't comprehend it. When his first comrade was torn apart, he immediately scanned the crowd. He wanted to find that mysterious expert. As long as they could find him, more than 50 hunters would approach him at the same time. Together with Captain Lun Yan's level 6 psychokinesis. In that case, it shouldn't be difficult to take down this mysterious expert. But he soon realized how foolish and ignorant his idea was. That was because his companions were being rapidly torn apart one by one. His gaze swept through the crowd a few times, but he didn't find any abnormalities at all. He placed his hopes on Lun Yan. Lun Yan was also a powerful psychokinesis. He hoped that Lun Yan would be able to resist for a while or find that mysterious expert. However, he discovered that Lun Yan, who had never panicked before, had an extremely frightened expression on his face at this moment. Seeing this level 8 psychokinesis understood. Captain Lun Yan was far from being a match for that mysterious expert. He immediately regretted it in his heart. If he had known this would happen, he wouldn't have come to snatch base C1. Now that they were facing such a powerful psychokinesis, what could they do? The only thing they could do was to run. Only by running out of the range of that psychokinesis's psychokinesis would they have a chance of survival. Thinking of this, he hurriedly ran into the distance. One step was 180 meters. Then he took a second step. However, he was only halfway through the second step. Tearing, his body was also torn into several pieces. His head flew more than 100 meters away and rolled at Lun Yan's feet. Lun Yan's face was already pale. He had tried to use his psychokinesis to resist just now. However, the moment his psychokinesis came out of his body, it was easily suppressed by a wave of psychokinesis that was as vast as the sea and as imposing as a mountain. At this moment, his psychokinesis could only be retracted back into his body. He couldn't even send out half of his psychokinesis. Tearing, 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 he could only watch as his subordinates were torn into several pieces one by one. The 10,000 people below the rostrum were all surprised and happy at this moment. Although this scene looked very bloody, none of them felt that it was wrong. Little Bean looked at Emoshir's back from a few meters away. The shock in her heart was even greater than before. He didn't need to do anything. Just his thoughts were enough to tear these hunters apart. He could even tear apart a level 8 hunter. How strong was Emoshir now? In just half a year, Emoshir's psychokinesis seemed to have become many times stronger than when he went to base C9. This kind of growth speed was too shocking. Beside Emoshir, Oldly was so shocked that he couldn't close his legs for a long time. Happy was also surprised, his mouth slightly open. She looked at Brother Emo beside her. Brother Emo didn't move at all. It was as if all this wasn't done by him at all. Could it be that she was wrong? Brother Emo wasn't the mysterious powerhouse at all? But Brother Mo's expression was calm and composed. It was far from the shock and surprise of the people around him. Then, was he really the mysterious powerhouse? On the rostrum, Base Chief Ma Yangshir's eyes were filled with excitement. His gaze kept sweeping over the 10,000 people below the rostrum. He was trying to find the mysterious powerhouse. However, there were too many people. It was difficult to find him in a short time. Tearing, 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 the sound of cloth being torn continued. The surrounding hunters all seemed to have gone crazy at this moment, crazily fleeing into the distance. However, none of the hunters were able to escape. On the contrary, the faster they ran, the faster they died. In the end, only 2 people were left. One was Lun Yin, whose face was pale and didn't move for a long time. The other was a level 5 hunter who didn't run from the beginning to the end. That level 5 hunter watched as his companion, who had just escaped 200 meters away, was torn into pieces by an invisible force. He shook his head in despair. He took one last look at Lun Yin and slowly closed his eyes. At the same time he said loudly, "You can kill me, you can kill all of us, but please let Captain Lu go." Below the rostrum, among the 10,000 people, Emoshir's psychokinesis paused for a moment. It wasn't that he planned to let these 2 people go. These people were cruel and provoked him in public. This was a slap to his face in front of everyone. How could he let them go? He was just a little surprised. This hunter was about to die, but instead of thinking for himself, he begged him to let this cruel and perverted Lun Yin go. This was something he didn't expect. Chapter 75. After saying those words, the hunter waited for his body to be torn apart. To be honest, they had only themselves to blame for doing such a thing and being torn apart now. He could accept any result. However, after waiting for a moment, his body was not torn apart. He understood that the mysterious powerhouse had given him a chance to speak. He suddenly seemed to have grasped at the last life-saving straw. He hurriedly said, "Captain Lu is also a pitiful person. He has a sister who is a hunter. When the virus first broke out, his parents died. The siblings relied on each other. Later, the 2 of them became psychokinesis and hunter respectively. In recent years, the zombies and mutated beasts near our base C10 have become stronger and stronger for some reason. The activity range of our base's hunter group has been greatly reduced. The leader of the base knows that this can't go on, so he sent our team to contact other bases. He wants to find a way to transfer the 120,000 people in our base out. Of course it's difficult. However, our base's hunter group is very strong. Although they are weaker than the monsters near our base, as long as we are away from base C10, our hunter group's strength can sweep away any other creatures in the wilderness. We went to base C8 and base C7, but they refused to accept us. Later, Captain Lu brought us to contact base C6. In the end, the hunter group of base C6 said that they would accept us, but they secretly drugged our food with hallucinogens. All of us had hallucinations in our minds and we didn't know what we were doing. Captain Lu's telekinesis is very strong, and he was the first to wake up. But when he woke up, he saw those people from base C6 killing our companions. And her sister was actually raped by a bastard from base C6. At this point, he had begun to gnash his teeth. At that time, Captain Lu's telekinesis had not fully recovered. He could only watch everything happen and watch that bastard kill his sister. Perhaps he was stimulated, but Captain Lu's telekinesis actually increased by 2 levels in a short period of time. Then he killed hundreds of hunters from base C6 and escaped with us, who had just recovered a little bit of consciousness. Since then, Captain Lu changed. He became more and more cruel. We also understand him. I brought Commander Yang's daughter up just now because Commander Yang's daughter looks a lot like his sister. Everyone was silent when they heard this. No one was born a villain or a pervert. He must have suffered unbearable pain. On the rostrum, Lun Yen was already in tears. His legs gave way and he sat down on the ground. The 4 flying daggers were out of his control. Finally, with a few clangs, it fell to the ground. He did not cry out loud. Only the tears, which seemed to have been suppressed for a long time, finally found an outlet and gushed out. At this moment, he was no longer the ruthless and powerful psychokinesis from before. Instead, he looked like a child who had just lost his mother. The eyes of the base chief were no longer as sharp as before. Instead, it flickered slightly. Even the short-haired hot girl was somewhat moved. She seemed to have forgotten the pain in her hand and slowly opened her mouth to speak. "Can we find a way to cripple his psychokinesis and then let the 2 of them leave?" The level 5 hunter's voice was choked with sobs. He raised his voice. "I've harmed so many people. Even death can't wipe out my crimes. But I beg you to let Captain Lu go. He's really a pitiful person. I beg you." Everyone was silent. However, Mosher did not think much of it. "What a joke. You came to base C1 and killed so many people. You want me to let him go just by saying, pitiful person? Did he lose his brain when he was having diarrhea? There were many pitiful people in this world. There was a saying that a pitiful person must have something to hate. Since you dared to come to base C1 to kill people, then stay." Thinking of this, he was about to activate his psychokinesis. But at this moment, on the rostrum, Lun Yen, who was sitting on the ground, looked like a child who had just lost his mother. His psychokinesis suddenly probed out of his body. He tried to control the flying daggers that had just fallen to the ground. Mosher had been shrouding him with his psychokinesis. Naturally, he had already noticed when his psychokinesis had just probed out of his body. He suddenly understood. So that's how it is. It turned out that Lun Yen and that hunter were just acting. They knew that they would not be able to escape death today, so they put on such a sad show. Of course, looking at Lun Yen's painful appearance just now, it did not seem like it was an act. It was very likely that he had really encountered those things. But at this moment, they were using such a thing to win the sympathy of the crowd. At the same time, it was also to numb the mysterious powerhouse and make him lower his guard. As a psychokinesis, Lun Yen's psychokinesis was far inferior to Mosher's. But he could vaguely sense the location of the mysterious powerhouse's psychokinesis. He planned to wait for the mysterious powerhouse to lower his guard before he suddenly attacked. Using his psychokinesis to control the flying daggers, he would instantly kill the mysterious powerhouse. Even if the mysterious powerhouse was as powerful as the mysterious powerhouse, it would be very easy for a level 6 psychokinesis to sneak attack him if he was not prepared. In their eyes, this was their only chance. Thinking of this, Mosher sneered in his heart. How could a mere firefly dare to compete with the sun and the moon? Then his psychokinesis moved slightly. At this moment, Lun Yen's psychokinesis had just probed out of his body. He was still slightly delighted in his heart. The mysterious powerhouse's psychokinesis had indeed not noticed him. Then, his psychokinesis probed the flying daggers on the ground. However, at this moment, before his psychokinesis touched the flying daggers, an incomparably tyrannical psyche power, like a mountain, suddenly came crashing down from all directions. Lun Yen's psychokinesis did not have any resistance and was instantly suppressed back into his body. His expression changed drastically. His face was filled with horror. The next moment, rip, Lun Yen heard the sound of his body being torn apart. It was not as clear as the sound of others. The tearing sound from his body was very loud. It was even a little ear-piercing. Rip, he also heard the sound of the hunter's body being torn apart. Both of their heads flew high into the air at the same time. Their consciousness still existed for a few seconds after their bodies died. In these few seconds, both of them were filled with incomparable fear, despair, and regret. If they had known that base C1 had such a powerful psychokinesis overseeing it, they would not have dared to come even if they were beaten to death. Mosher coldly looked at the 2 people's bodies being torn into pieces. There was no expression on his face. The more than 10,000 people at the scene who were moved by Lun Yen's story all had a drastic change in expression. Even the chief of the base, Ma Yangsher, was shocked. They did not know that Lun Yen planned to use psychokinesis to sneak attack. In their opinion, Lun Yen was indeed very pitiful. They were even considering whether to give Lun Yen a lighter punishment. They could break his hands and feet or cripple his psychokinesis. They could let him reform in the farm of base C1 or use other methods. But at least spare his life. But no one expected that the mysterious powerhouse would not give him a chance at all. Instantly torn apart. This made everyone's hearts, in addition to respect for the mysterious powerhouse, there was also a lot of fear and dread. The mysterious powerhouse had indeed saved the base several times. But he was not a saint, nor was he a good person. Nor was he a soft-hearted person. Chapter 76. On the field in front of the rostrum, everyone was awestruck. Before, they had pure worship or respect for the mysterious strong man. But from now on, everyone had a trace of fear for the mysterious strong man. Together it was awe, respect and fear. Many people were moved by Lun Yan's story. If it were them, they would probably destroy Lun Yan's mind power and let him go. Even those who were more hard-hearted and never intended to let Lun Yan go would hesitate for a moment. However, the mysterious strong man did not hesitate at all. Lun Yan was instantly torn into pieces by the strong mind power. It was obvious that the mysterious strong man was not a good person. He was not a saint or a soft-hearted person. In the past, some people would occasionally complain. They said that the mysterious strong man should show up. Since he was so strong, he should lead the hunting group and set an example for everyone. The greater the power, the greater the responsibility. But now no one dared to have such thoughts. Perhaps it was a good thing for them that the mysterious strong man did not show up. Not far from Imoshir, Xiaodo stared at Imoshir's back. His eyes were full of shock. When he was in the zombie farm, he always thought that Imoshir was a very easygoing person. He was not ambitious and stood aloof from worldly affairs. He was content with the status quo. Later, at base C9, he realized that Imoshir was not as easygoing as he seemed. Millions of corpses and rivers of blood. But now he knew that he was wrong. Imoshir was not only cruel to zombies but also to humans. He was ruthless and decisive. Not only were the enemies afraid of him, but even the people in the base began to revere him. Beneath his easygoing and tranquil appearance was an incomparably tyrannical strength and decisive means of killing. The psychological impact of this contrast was simply too great. It seemed that he should stay away from Imoshir if he had nothing to do in the future. The farther the better. On the rostrum, the base chief did not expect the mysterious strong man to be so ruthless. After a moment of shock, he suddenly remembered something. He hurriedly shouted, "Find a doctor and save Commander Yang." Only then did the crowd recover from the shock from before. Yang Kang's daughter also ran in the direction of Yang Kang again. Soon the doctor made a simple diagnosis. Then he raised his head and said in disbelief, "His heart and head were pierced, but he's still alive. This is simply a miracle." The base chief hurriedly asked, "Could it be because he's a hunter and his body is much stronger than ordinary people?" The doctor shook his head and replied, "Although this is also a factor, the most important factor is his own willpower. He must have something unfinished or someone he can't let go of." When the members of the body hunters heard this, they all looked at Yang Kang's daughter, Yang Xiaoyan. They all knew how much Commander Yang loved his daughter. His wife had passed away several years ago. He had raised his daughter all by himself. Other than the work of the hunting group, he spent almost all his energy on his daughter. If there was someone in his heart that he couldn't let go of, it would definitely be his daughter, Yang Xiaoyan. "It's his daughter, Yang Xiaoyan," a corpse hunter said. When everyone heard this, they also recalled the scene just now. Yang Kang's heart and head were clearly pierced, and it had been 6 or 7 hours since he was pierced. If it was anyone else, they would have died long ago. But not only did he not die, and when his daughter was taken away, he actually reached out and grabbed the hunter's ankle. How strong must his willpower be to be able to do that? No matter how strong his willpower was, he couldn't do that. Perhaps only a father like him could do that. At this moment they looked at Yang Kang again. His right hand was still grabbing the hunter's ankle. When the doctor carefully examined it, he found that the bones in his hand were broken. It was obviously broken when the hunter tried to shake off his hand. Everyone was shocked again. A father's love was so great. A few corpse hunters, with reverence, carefully carried Yang Kang onto the stretcher. They slowly sent him to the infirmary of the hunting group. Everywhere they passed, everyone stared at the unconscious Yang Kang. Yang Kang's daughter, Yang Xiaoyan, had been holding her father's hand tightly. Tears had already blurred her eyes. In fact, no one knew that there were 3 reasons why Yang Kang was still alive. First, it was his physique. Second, it was because he was worried. Third, it was because he had taken the recovery medicine given by Imoshir. At that time, he was just an ordinary person. He couldn't completely digest the medicine. After nearly 10 years, the medicine was already less than 1/10 of it. The remaining trace of medicine, although it couldn't completely restore him. However, he was barely able to hang on to his last breath. Otherwise, no matter how strong his willpower was, he couldn't have survived such a serious injury. From this, it could be seen how crazy the recovery medicine produced by the system was. But at this time, Immortality didn't know this. He didn't plan to give Yang Kang another bottle of recovery medicine. With Yang Kang's physique, since he could live until now, it shouldn't be difficult for him to keep his life. At this time, his gaze fell on the hot short-haired girl on the rostrum. There were thousands of corpse hunters in the hunting group, and tens of thousands of people present. She was the only one who dared to curse at Lun Yen. And she knew that as long as she endured for a while, she would be safe when the mysterious expert made his move. But she still refused to surrender. Even if she raised her hand for a second, it would be humiliating for her. How could a girl be so unyielding to such an extent? It made all the men present blush with shame. Immortality also admired him in his heart. A moment later, the base chief began to instruct everyone to deal with the corpses. At the same time, he also sent out some corpse hunters to persuade these civilians to go back first. Immortality also followed the crowd and walked towards the corpse field. As he walked, he recalled the feeling of using his telekinesis to tear those people apart. In fact, although he had reached level 9 psychokinesis, he could only lift things under 90 kilograms. With this kind of strength, it was impossible to tear a human body apart. However, after reaching level 9, his telekinesis was able to probe the human body to the finest detail. Which muscles of the human body were the easiest to tear, which bones were the weakest? Where had there been a fracture or an injury? He could easily detect all of this with just a probing of his mind power. Then he could start from these places and combine it with the strength of 90 kilograms and below to do all this. The principle was like a skilled butcher dismembering a cow. Once he was familiar with the structure of the cow's body, he could do it with ease. Immortality thought to himself that when his telekinesis was stronger in the future, even if he encountered those powerful mutated zombies, he could easily dismember their bodies. That night after 12 o'clock, Immortality, as usual, planned to double and specify the rewards. But he suddenly had a thought. He had just done such a big thing today. Maybe he could try and see if he could sign other good things. Chapter 77. According to Immortality's original understanding, the event's sign-in mechanism had to be immediately signed in right after the event was completed. Now that an entire day had passed, the sign-in probably wouldn't have any effect at all. But how would he know if he didn't give it a try? Thinking of this, Immortality asked in his mind, "System, can I still use the event sign-in now?" The system's voice sounded frowny face yes. Immortality was a little surprised and asked, "Didn't you say that only after signing in immediately after doing a specific event can there be a specific event reward?" The system's voice sounded frowny face. The system never said that. The host has misunderstood. Immortality was a little speechless. It turned out that his understanding of the event reward mechanism had been wrong for such a long time. Thinking about it carefully, the system didn't seem to say that he had to sign in immediately after doing something to activate the event reward mechanism. Then let's sign in. Immortality rubbed his hands expectantly. Sign in successful. Sign in event. Use psychokinesis to tear apart the enemy. Sign in reward. Doomsday tier memory plunder. Huh? Immortality was a little surprised. It turned out to be 2 skills. In the past, only when the system upgraded would there be more than 2 skill rewards. Pleasantly surprised, he opened the skill description. Doomsday tier. Within the range of psychokinesis, you can use psychokinesis to find the enemy's weakness and tear it apart. AoE skills consume a lot of psychokinesis. Use with caution. Memory plunder. You can use psychokinesis to forcibly plunder the memories of others. The person whose memories are plundered will have a strong impact on the brain and will lose their memories. Their intelligence will also be irreversibly damaged. Use with caution. Immortality was secretly shocked when he saw the descriptions of these 2 skills. These 2 skills were very violent and domineering skills. This was probably in line with the temperament of a dragon. Especially this memory plunder. Immortality actually wanted to ask Lun Yen and the others about base C10 during the day. What exactly happened there? The mutated beasts and zombies nearby were actually stronger than other places. But there were too many people during the day, so it wasn't easy to ask. He couldn't be bothered to do anything else. In any case, he didn't plan to leave base C1 for the time being. He would think about it when he went out later. Therefore he killed them all on the spot. But now that he had memory plunder, if he encountered such a situation in the future, he would directly plunder their memories. Wouldn't that save a lot of trouble? In the future with these 2 skills he would have 2 more trump cards. Thinking of this, he shook his head helplessly and sighed. He had too many trump cards. Sometimes he didn't even know which one to play. This was also a happy annoyance. The next day, Mo Shi resumed his peaceful life. As for how the body hunters would regroup and how Yang Kong would recover, that was not his concern. However, while they were chatting, he heard Old Li mention something. Little Mo, that hot chick from yesterday, do you know why he would rather die than surrender? Mo Shi was interested in this matter and asked, what's wrong? Happy had just gotten some food from the cafeteria, and he passed it to Mo Shi and Old Li. He also looked at Old Li curiously. Old Li opened the lunchbox and drank a mouthful of porridge. He said, Happy is a good child. Whoever marries her will definitely be blessed by 8 generations of ancestors. As he spoke, he glanced at Mo Shi intentionally. Mo Shi also drank a mouthful of porridge and said, You sound like you're scolding someone. Old Li glared at Mo Shi. He thought to himself, this kid always interrupts when we're talking about serious matters. He shook his head and continued, I heard from Mr. Wang, who wears bottle-bottomed glasses, that when Hot Chick was young, the base had not been built yet. The zombie virus had just arrived and the world was in chaos. In order to fight for supplies, people would kill and set fires. They would do anything. One day, a gunman broke into their house. He snatched a big bag of food and water and even shot her mother to death. At that time, when the gunman was packing the food and water, he put down the gun. Hot Chick always thought that if her father had been braver, he could have pounced on him and snatched the gun. That way her mother would not have been shot to death. But at that time, her father kept his hands up and stood facing the wall, trembling. From then on, she hated seeing people raise their hands the most. Hence, yesterday she would rather die than raise her hands for even a second. When Mo Shi and Happy heard this, they both sighed. Old Li sighed in the end. There are all kinds of fathers in this world. There are Yang Kong who misses his daughter so much that he has to force himself to endure even when he's injured. There are also fathers like Hot Chick's father. At the same time, in Chief Ma Yangshi's office, Chief Ma Yangshi was sitting behind his desk. The bruises on his face had not completely disappeared. There were 2 people sitting on the sofa in front of his desk. One of them was the vice leader of the hunter group, Guojutao, who had always been a little sissy. 2 days ago, he led a team of 10 people to explore the area around the base. He had just returned today. The other person was the person in charge of the base's laboratory, a woman, Professor Chen. Chief Ma Yangshi looked at Guojutao and said in a low voice, The doctor said that Leader Yang's life can be saved. Guojutao was instantly delighted and said in a sissy voice, That's great. With the leader's body, it won't be long before he fully recovers. The leader is the soul of the hunter group. The hunter group can't do without him. Chief Ma Yangshi did not have a hint of joy on his face. However, although his life can be saved, the injury to his heart is too serious. Even if he recovers, he won't be able to do strenuous exercise in the future. In other words, he will become a normal person. The joy on Guojutao's face instantly froze. Chief, are you joking? Chief Ma Yangshi did not answer. However, Guojutao already knew the answer from his gloomy face. Guojutao was a little confused. He thought that the leader would return soon. He did not expect this to be the result. Ma Yangshi also sighed. So, you have to take up the responsibility of the leader of the hunter group and reorganize the hunter group. Guojutao's face showed panic. Since the beginning of the hunter group, he had always been the leader's assistant. Later, in the body hunters, he was also the deputy leader. Until now, he was the deputy leader. He had never been the leader. Now, the base chief suddenly asked him to be the leader. He could not do it at all. And he knew that he was a little sissy. Although he hated it when others said that about him, he knew in his heart that it was the truth. How could he be the leader? Who would be convinced by him? Chief Ma Yangshi's gaze slowly moved to Guojutao's face. Staring into his eyes, he said, I believe that you can do it well. Moreover, this is an order. Guojutao hesitated for a moment and finally puffed out his chest. Chief, I promise to complete the mission. Although he was still a little nervous, he also knew that in the current situation, it seemed that no one in the hunter group could take on this responsibility except him. Ma Yangshi nodded. Then he looked at Dr. Chen in the laboratory. Dr. Chen, the mutated zombies and mutated beasts outside are getting stronger and stronger. Our hunter group suffered heavy losses at this time. If the zombies attack the city soon, I'm afraid we won't be able to resist at all. Although there is a mysterious strong man in charge, we can't rely on him forever. After all, a person like the mysterious strong man can't stay in the base forever. Therefore, I want you to restart Project X. Dr. Chen's expression changed slightly. Project X? Chief, the mutated zombies created by Project X are indeed much stronger than the naturally mutated zombies outside the base. But the uncertainty is also much greater. The mutated zombies we created went out of control and killed more than a dozen researchers. Then they broke into the zombie farm. It almost caused a disaster. Even now, I still wake up from my dreams. I'm afraid it's not appropriate to restart Project X now. Ma Yangshi shook his head. Last time, we underestimated the strength of the man-made mutated zombies. This time we have a sample and a certain amount of data. We are fully prepared. If we combine it with the mutated zombie blood that Lun Yan brought, we might be able to create a stronger mutated zombie that will listen to our orders. Dr. Chen was nervous when he heard this crazy plan, but he was also slightly excited. Chapter 78. Ma Yangshi's so-called Project X was to create mutated zombies. In the past, Ma Yangshi had discovered that the zombies in the wilderness were getting stronger and stronger. He had already predicted that the zombies would attack the city in the future. With the few firearms that humans had, they would definitely not be able to resist. So he ordered the laboratory to try to artificially create mutated zombies. Then he would think of a way to tame these mutated zombies and let them be used by humans. If they succeeded, humans would have a great advantage in the battle against zombies in the future. The mutated zombies that they created were indeed very strong, dozens of times stronger than the mutated zombies in the wilderness. But they were extremely unstable and easy to lose control. This was why the mutated zombies escaped from the laboratory that year. Since then, Ma Yangshi had put Project X on hold. Until now, powerful mutated zombies had appeared in the wilderness, and their hunting group had suffered heavy losses. So he wanted to restart Project X again. While Dr. Chen was nervous, he was also a little excited. It was her lifelong regret that she couldn't continue with Project X back then. Now the leader had finally ordered to restart it. How could this not make her excited? After the leader of the base finished these two things, he seemed to have finally fulfilled his wish. He leaned back in his chair and closed his eyes tiredly. In the next few days, Mo Sure still signed in every day, raised pigs and fed zombies. Different from the past, this time he did not hear anyone talking about the mysterious strong man. There were even many people who avoided the words, mysterious expert. Obviously, Mo Sure's ruthless methods that day made these people in awe. They no longer dared to casually talk about him. Mo Sure was also happy to be quiet. In the base there were big news from time to time. The biggest news was that the leader of the base had resigned. It had been more than 20 years since the base was established. During this period, the leader had been leading the base. Whether it was his leadership ability or his sense of responsibility, there was nothing to say. Everyone was sincerely convinced by him. Never would they have thought that the leader would suddenly resign. In the yard, Mo Sure and Old Li finished feeding the pigs and zombies. The two were still chatting under the grape trellis. Recently there have been more and more zombies sent to the zombie farm. It's a little too busy. Old Li sighed as he massaged his waist. Mo Sure nodded. There's a lot of demand in the lab, so our corpses are naturally busy. Old Li said, I'm old and my legs aren't good. It's been a busy day and I can't take it anymore. Happy is a girl, and she might not be able to handle such heavy work. Shouldn't the leader send more people over? Mo Sure nodded again. I think, since the leader is so understanding, he should know. Just as they were talking, footsteps sounded outside the door. Two people walked in from outside the door. One of them was a leader, and the other was the chief of the base, Ma Yangshi. Old Li immediately stood up with a nervous and surprised expression on his face. The chief was a big shot. When had he ever come to a corpse farm? He had been in the base for more than 20 years, but he had never been so close to the chief. Chief, why are you here? Old Li felt a little uneasy. Ma Yangshi seemed to have aged a lot in these few days. He smiled. Old Li, right? You can call me Old Ma. I'm no longer the chief. This, Old Li was an honest man. He naturally could not change the way he addressed Ma Yangshi. Ma Yangshi's expression was a little gloomy. I made a mistake, so I should be punished. I asked the new chief to punish me, but he refused no matter what. I had no choice, so I could only punish myself. I sent myself here. The smile on his face was obviously a little pale. This, Old Li's face was filled with disbelief. The chief of the base was a person who stood at the top of the base. And the corpse farm was a job that was looked down upon the most. The chief of the base actually came here to raise corpses? This was something he did not even dare to dream of in the past. The leader said to Old Li, "All right, all right. All right, all right, Old Li. We'll do whatever the chief says. In the future you have to take care of the chief. Otherwise I won't forgive you." Old Li quickly nodded. "Yes, yes." Ma Yangshi said, "I told you I'm a normal person now. Don't call me chief anymore." Then he looked at Emo sure and happy and smiled. "You must be young Emo and happy. I'm a complete newbie now. I'll need you to take care of me." Happy was a little flustered. After all, no matter what, he was still the chief of the base. A person who stood high above others. Emo sure was the only one who smiled generously. "No problem." Over the next few days, Mo Sure and Happy brought Old Ma to familiarize himself with the work and the environment. Old Li still could not change the way he addressed Ma Yangshi and kept calling him chief. Only Mo Sure called him Old Ma generously. This made Old Ma feel very comfortable. Due to Old Ma's arrival, the number of guests in the corpse farm also increased. However, Old Ma did not seem to be willing to meet people. Gradually, the number of people who came became fewer and fewer. The corpse farm returned to its former peace. A few days later, when Old Ma familiarized himself with the work, more than 20 zombies and 10 pigs were transferred to the corpse farm. These zombies and pigs would be under Old Ma's care in the future. Old Ma was quite nimble and diligent in his work. Moreover, he treated people warmly and did not have the air of a former chief. Therefore he quickly gained the favor of the people in the corpse farm. However, this everyone did not include Emo Sure. He always felt that there was something fishy about this matter. As for what exactly was fishy, he could not tell. It was just a feeling. Emo Sure secretly guessed in his heart that Ma Yangshi had come for him. Could it be that he already knew that he was the mysterious powerhouse? However, the current Emo Sure did not care whether his identity was exposed or not. In front of his absolute strength, any schemes were just a joke. The reason why he did not take the initiative to expose himself was because he loved peace and was afraid of trouble. Every day after finishing the work in the corpse farm, he had nothing else to do and was free. However, he was still a little curious about Ma Yangshi's goal. Therefore, in the next few days after Emo Sure finished feeding the zombies and pigs, he seemed to be resting under the grape trellis. However, he had already sent out his psychic power to observe Old Ma's every move. Sure enough, as soon as he probed, he found out that something was wrong. These days there was a great demand for zombies in the laboratory. The hunting group caught zombies from outside the base and brought them to the corpse farm. In a few days these zombies would be taken away by the laboratory. As the saying goes, the corpse farm was made of iron and the zombies flowed like water. However, among the zombies raised by Ma Yangshi, there was one zombie that had been raised in the zombie room and had never been taken away. Moreover, every time Ma Yangshi went in to feed this zombie, he always stayed longer than in other corpse farms. There was even one time when Ma Yangshi's eyes were shining with tears when he faced this zombie. Emo Sure couldn't help but become curious. Chapter 79. Emo Sure used his telekinesis to detect that Ma Yangshi was actually crying to a zombie. A living person would shed tears for a zombie. Emo Sure was puzzled and carefully examined the zombie again. This was a female zombie. She was about 30 years old. Other than the obvious claw marks on her neck, there were no other injuries. And every time Ma Yangshi saw this female zombie, his eyes were filled with pain. After detecting this and combining it with Ma Yangshi's behavior, Emo Sure suddenly realized something. A human being could have feelings for a zombie. There were only two possibilities. 1. This person was obsessed with corpses. This had happened in the base before. 2. This zombie was once this person's true love. Obviously, Ma Yangshi should be the latter. Combined with Ma Yangshi's age, Emo Sure guessed that this female zombie should have been his girlfriend or wife. More than 20 years had passed and the appearance of zombies had not changed much. And Ma Yangshi was already old. Emo Sure guessed this and couldn't help but be moved. So that was it. Ma Yangshi was the real zombie keeper. After this woman became a zombie, he didn't abandon her. Instead, he kept her until now. He kept her for more than 20 years. One must know that when the base was first established, people hated zombies to the extreme. Zombies destroyed the whole world, destroyed their families, harmed their parents, children, and loved ones. They had long hated zombies to the bone. So a few years later, when the zombie farm was established, it was after countless discussions and tremendous pressure that the zombie farm was built. In that kind of environment, if someone raised a zombie privately, he would probably be beaten to death immediately. It was conceivable that Ma Yangshi wanted to raise a zombie without anyone knowing, and for more than 20 years. How difficult was it? It also showed how deep his love for this woman was. After discovering this, Mo Shi's heart had a little more respect for Ma Yangshi. However, that was all. When he saw Ma Yangshi again, Mo Shi acted as if he didn't know about this at all. This was Ma Yangshi's business. As long as it didn't affect his comfortable life, Mo Shi was too lazy to meddle in other people's business. In the blink of an eye, another 3 months had passed. Over the past 3 months, Mo Shi's psychokinesis finally showed signs of a breakthrough through the continuous injections of brain cell enhancers. At midnight that night, Mo Shi decided to sign in 10 bottles of the enhanced version of brain cell enhancer. He injected these enhancers into his body one by one. With the strength of his body now, it was naturally impossible for an ordinary syringe to penetrate his body. However, the syringes he received from the system were all made of special materials and were extremely sharp. On top of that, Mo Shi's telekinesis allowed him to detect the most minute details. It could find the most vulnerable part of the skin. Furthermore, his strength was far from what an ordinary person could compare to. That was why it could easily pierce through the skin. Soon, the 8th injection was completed. At this moment, he felt his head begin to heat up. His heart skipped a beat. I'm finally going to break through. He then put the remaining 2 syringes into his backpack. Then he used his telekinesis to observe the medicinal power that had just entered his body. The medicinal effect flowed through his blood vessels and headed straight for his brain. In the brain, it spread along the capillaries. Along with the spread of the medicinal effect, his telekinesis also spread out instantly. His telekinesis covered a radius of 900 meters. However, as the medicinal effect took effect, the range of his telekinesis rapidly expanded. 910 meters, 930 meters, 991 meters, 1000 meters. Within a radius of 1,000 meters, any movement in the wind or grass could be seen. He could easily detect 2 mosquitoes flirting with each other in the warehouse 1,000 meters away. At the same time, as long as it was less than 100 kilograms, he could lift it. In other words, with his current telekinesis, he could casually lift a person. Of course, the increase in the power of telekinesis was only secondary. The most important thing was that after his telekinesis reached level 10, his use of telekinesis would become more skillful and natural. In the past, when he was level 8, he could use his telekinesis to multitask. Now that he had become a level 10 telekinesis master, his telekinesis was able to do 3 things at once. Moreover, after his telekinesis reached level 10, the most terrifying thing was that his combat strength had greatly increased. He could feel that with his current telekinesis, even if he were to face a level 10 strong mutated zombie, he could easily blow up their heads with just a thought. This made Mo Shi slightly excited. Then he picked up the 9th brain cell enhancer and injected it into his body. He had a hunch that level 10 of psychokinesis was not the end. He still had a long way to go to be invincible in the world. However, this time, when the medicinal effect entered his body and rushed into his brain, it did not act on his brain cells. Instead, after circulating in his body, it was discharged through his sweat pores. Mo Shi smiled bitterly. It seemed that his telekinesis had been raised to the limit. If he wanted to raise it further, it was not something that could be done by the medicinal effect. He had to find the right opportunity. However, this matter could not be rushed. Fortunately, now that his telekinesis had increased, he could detect the changes in the medicinal effect when it entered his body. It would not be like when he reached the limit of a zombie hunter and wasted a lot of enhancers. Next, it was time to increase his physical strength. At midnight the next day, Mo Shi signed in and received 10 Titan Dragon Gene enhancers. They were injected into his body. He estimated that he would be able to break through in 3 months at most. At that time, his hunter psychokinesis would reach the peak of level 10 at the same time. Thinking about it, he was really looking forward to it. However, on this day, another uninvited guest appeared in the base. It was a man and a woman. The man was a hunter. The woman was a psychokinesis. What was even more surprising was that they were actually flying a helicopter over. One had to know that monsters were everywhere outside the base. Naturally, no one was mining oil. Things like helicopters, which consumed a lot of fuel, could not fly anymore. The people of Base C1 had not seen a helicopter fly for more than 10 years. Now that these 2 people were driving a helicopter, it was surprising. However, the people of the base were only surprised. They treated these 2 people extremely coldly. After the incident with Lu Wang and Lu Nian, they were quite repulsed by outsiders. Therefore, as soon as the helicopter landed, they took control of the man and woman. After the interrogation of the new chief of the base, they learned that the man and woman were from Base C2. Their Base C2 happened to be built near an oil field. It took them nearly 5 years to recover the oil field. And this time they came out to contact the other bases. The mutated beasts and mutated zombies were getting stronger and stronger, and humans seemed to be facing a real extinction. Therefore, they were ordered by the chief of the base to contact the other bases to find a solution. In the zombie farm. When Doomsday heard Oldly say that these two people were from Base C2, he could not help but be moved. Base C2 was only 100 kilometers away from the Draconic ruins. Chapter 80. According to the map that Immortality had obtained, there were many people in the area. The location of the Dragon Ruins was more than 100 kilometers away from Base C2. Immortality was not very strong before, so he did not go there. But now that his telekinesis had reached level 10, he was almost invincible in the wilderness. And he had a trump card like the Dragon Shadow Step. If he encountered danger, he could escape if he could not win. He was a little tempted. When the two of them left, should he leave with them? However, before they could leave, strange things happened in the base. On this day, Immortality was feeding zombies in the base. Suddenly, he heard a soft sound coming from afar. Puff. If it was an ordinary person, it would be impossible to hear it from so far away. Even hunters could not do it. But Immortality, as a psychokinesis, caught this soft sound. However, he did not care. But half a day later there was news. The captain of the hunting group 1, Little Bean, was assassinated. Although it did not hit the vital parts, Little Bean's life was saved. But this matter attracted the attention of the entire Base C1. After all, attacking a member of the hunting group had never happened before. The members of the hunting group were all very strong. And their duty was to protect the safety of the entire base. Therefore, most people were very respectful to the members of the hunting group and would not harm them. Even if the members of the hunting group had conflicts, they would not be stupid enough to shoot in the base. They could easily find a place outside the base to harm the other party, and it would not easily arouse suspicion. So who was it? Why did they do this? Many people pointed the finger of suspicion at the two people from Base C2. However, the two of them had alibis. The new chief of the base ordered the body hunters to investigate this matter thoroughly. However, no one would have thought. This was just the beginning. 3 days later it was lunchtime. Suddenly, a roar came from the direction of the laboratory. Roar, roar. Then an ear-piercing alarm sounded. Beep, beep, beep. Then there were screams in the laboratory. Boom, another loud sound came. Immortality used his telekinesis to check. He found that the door of the laboratory, which was used to resist rockets, was directly blown out. Then a huge guy with a height of 3 meters jumped out. This guy did not have an upper lip, so his sharp teeth were exposed. It looked extremely ugly. On his shoulders there were several bone spurs as thick as fingers. His entire right arm had transformed into a 2-meter-long sharp blade. His left arm transformed into a 3-meter-long axe. When Immortality's telekinesis probed this guy, he was speechless. Those fellows in the laboratory didn't learn from their mistakes. He had created such a monster again. However, this time, Immortality did not intend to make a move. With the strength of the body hunters, it shouldn't be difficult to deal with this mutant zombie. The mutated zombie wreaked havoc at the entrance of the laboratory. The corpse hunting team rushed over after hearing the news and hurriedly used their guns and rockets to force it back into the laboratory. But he didn't expect it to backfire. This mutated zombie, after being bombarded by the artillery, actually turned around and rushed straight to the corpse farm. Immortality shook his head helplessly. He wondered if he had gone back in time to 6 or 7 years ago. In the other rooms of the corpse farm, Oldly, Happy, and the former chief Jianghu were all nervously hiding in their own rooms. But different from Oldly and Jianghu. Happy even looked at Immortality's room through the crack in the window from time to time. Would Brother Immo make a move? If a monster rushed in, would she be able to see Brother Immo make a move for the first time? However, it was obvious that she was going to be disappointed. When the mutated zombie jumped 5 meters and was about to jump in from the wall of the corpse farm. Bang, there was a loud noise. A foot kicked the head of the mutated zombie. The mutated zombie was immediately sent flying. The person who came was a hunter from the body hunters. With him, it was easy to deal with the mutated zombie. Happy couldn't help but feel slightly disappointed. Fortunately, it didn't cause much damage. However, after this incident, many people began to feel nervous. More people pointed their fingers at the man and woman in Base C2. When Immortality and Happy went to the cafeteria to eat, they heard the discussion. Before those two people came, everything in the base was fine. A few days after they arrived, Captain Little Bean was attacked, and the murderer hasn't been found yet. Now the mutated zombie is out again. It must be them. If it's not them, who else could it be? In my opinion, they should be sentenced to death. Or at the very least, they should be chased out of the base. Another person said. The lab didn't learn from their mistakes. 6 or 7 years ago, the mutated zombie killed so many people. They actually dared to study mutated zombies. They were just following orders. I heard that the research this time was ordered by the former chief. He said that he wanted to study mutated zombies that could be commanded to increase the overall strength of the base. Oh, if that's the case, then there's no problem. Because of the previous incident, Chief Ma took the blame and resigned. He even sent himself to the corpse farm. There's nothing to say about this kind of person. I'm just worried that this will create stronger monsters and destroy the entire base. Sai, there's nothing we can do about it. The zombies outside are getting stronger and stronger. If we don't do this, the base will still be destroyed. It's just a matter of time. I think Chief Ma did the right thing. When Emosher heard this, he felt that it was a little strange. As for what was strange, he couldn't figure it out. Since he couldn't figure it out, he was too lazy to think about it. In short, it was fine as long as it wasn't directed at him. Even if it was directed at him, with his strength, the other party would just be digging their own graves. After the mutated zombie incident, the man and woman from Base C2 were directly quarantined for 3 days. After the body hunters investigated and confirmed that it wasn't them who did it, they were released. If it was an ordinary person, they would have left immediately after receiving this kind of treatment. But this man and woman were very abnormal. Not only did they not leave immediately, but they also strolled around the base. They seemed to be very interested in the laboratory and the corpse farm. Even if they were pointed at by passers-by, they still acted as if nothing happened. Of course, they couldn't enter the laboratory. They walked around the laboratory a few times. Then they came to the corpse farm. After Emosher finished feeding the zombies, he was basking in the sun with Old Lee and Old Ma in the yard and chatting. Happy was mending a camouflage uniform that Emosher had punctured. In this apocalyptic world, resources were scarce. Of course, cloth was also very scarce. People's clothes were usually mended over and over again until they couldn't be mended anymore. Then they would change into a slightly newer set of old clothes. When they heard the sound of footsteps, they looked up. They saw the man and woman walking in. The man was in his 30s and had a scar at the corner of his eye. The woman was also in her 30s and was wearing a tight leather jacket. She looked valiant and heroic, but also sexy. Old Lee, who had always been honest, couldn't help but frown when he saw these two people. Although he wasn't sure if these two people had anything to do with the two incidents, it was true that after these two people arrived, strange things began to happen. Happy subconsciously moved closer to Emosher. The former chief, Old Ma, was very enthusiastic. You're here. Take a seat. I'll get you some water. The man glanced at the 4 people. When he saw Happy, his eyes couldn't help but light up. Chapter 81. When the young man saw Happy, his eyes instantly lit up. It was as if he was a child who had discovered a new toy. Although his gaze only flashed for a moment, Emosher's mental power was far superior to that of a normal person, so he still caught it. He furrowed his brows slightly. Although Emosher had not confirmed his relationship with Happy yet, he would never allow anyone else to think about Happy. The young man acted as if he was familiar with them. He extended his hand and was about to shake hands with everyone. While shaking hands with Old Lee, he said, "Uncle, I'm Hao Ren, a level 5 hunter from Base C2. Nice to meet you." Then he shook hands with Old Ma, who had just brought water over. Then he extended his hand to Emosher. Emosher acted as if he did not see it. He turned his head, picked up the cup, and drank the water by himself. Hao Ren did not feel awkward. He turned to Happy. His eyes lit up and he extended his hand. Happy hesitated for a moment, then imitated Emosher. He turned 90 degrees and continued to mend his clothes. Emosher was a little surprised. "Happy, you've learned bad things." Hao Ren was rejected by Happy, and there was a hint of regret in his eyes. The woman beside him glared at Hao Ren. Hao Ren acted as if he did not notice it. He continued to point at the woman in leather and introduced her to everyone. "This is my colleague, Zhen Shishir." The beautiful Zhen Shishir smiled politely at everyone. However, when she glanced at Happy, a hint of surprise and jealousy flashed in her eyes. She thought that she was already very beautiful, but she did not expect this girl to be even more beautiful than her. No wonder that scumbag Hao Ren's eyes widened when he saw this girl. When she thought of this, she glared at Hao Ren again. Hao Ren acted as if he did not notice it. He laughed and said, Base C2 doesn't have a laboratory or a corpse farm. We're here today because we want to visit and learn. When we return to the base, we'll suggest to the leader that we should build a laboratory and a corpse farm as well. That's why all of you are my masters. Seniors, please take care of me. Emosher didn't respond to him. Naturally, Happy ignored him. Old Li only snorted. Only Old Ma said with a smile. I see. Welcome, welcome. Now that all humans share a common destiny, our bases should communicate more and learn from each other's strengths. Then he turned to Emosher and said, Emosher, Happy, the zombies you raise are the best. You can show them around. Emosher yawned and said, I'm tired. As he spoke, he stood up and slowly walked out of the courtyard. Happy picked up the clothes by his side and lifted them. She indicated that she was mending her clothes and had no time. Although she couldn't speak, she wasn't a fool. Just now, the way this Hao Ren looked at her was a little strange. That guy was not a good person at all. Even though she felt that she wasn't good enough for Brother Mo, however, she didn't want Brother Mo to misunderstand. Seeing this, Old Ma shook his head helplessly. He said to Emosher and Happy, If you're busy, give me the key. I'll show them around. Emosher's voice came from the entrance of the courtyard. It's in my room. Happy knows where it is. Happy immediately got up and entered Emosher's room. He took out a string of keys to the zombie cultivation room. Then he handed the keys to her row of zombie cultivation rooms to Old Ma. Then he took the clothes he was mending and entered the room. Old Ma smiled wryly and sighed. Young people, Hao Ren didn't care at all. He glanced at Happy's door. He said, Actually, we can all understand. After we came to the base, strange things kept happening. If it were us, we would also be suspicious. We have already been treated as enemies by all the people in base C1. So, we will try our best to learn your advanced experience over the next 2 days. We plan to leave the day after tomorrow. Old Ma didn't say anything else. He brought the two of them to carefully visit Emosher and Happy's row of zombie cultivation rooms. At 3 o'clock in the afternoon, the man and woman left the zombie farm. When they were about to leave, Hao Ren still looked at Happy's room reluctantly. He said loudly, Then we'll take our leave. The woman called Jin Shirsher also keenly noticed this. She also glanced at Happy's room. A hint of coldness flashed in her eyes. They were 1,000 meters away from the zombie farm. Jin Shirsher let out a cold snort. You can't walk when you see a beautiful woman. Hao Ren giggled and said, Beauty is beautiful. Everyone has a love for beauty, isn't it? Besides, I'm lustful but not lustful. It doesn't matter if I just take a look. Jin Shirsher snorted coldly again. Am I not enough for you to look at? Hao Ren giggled again. Of course you're beautiful. It's just that if you look at the same kind of beauty for a long time, it's inevitable that you'll get tired. Look at someone else and relieve your fatigue. At that time, when I look back at you, I'll find you even more beautiful. Jin Shirsher glared at Hao Ren. Shameless. Then she said coldly, If you dare to look at this woman again in the future, I'll kill her. Hao Ren's forehead immediately broke out in a cold sweat. He quickly begged for mercy. I say, Sister Zhen, please don't cause trouble again. We're about to leave. If you really cause trouble again, will you still be able to leave? Jin Shirsher sneered. This crappy base doesn't even have a single psychokinesis. If I want to leave, will they be able to stop me? Hao Ren nodded repeatedly. You're a level 4 psychokinesis. I'm a level 5 hunter. If we really want to leave, no one in this base can stop us. But let's try not to cause trouble. We're here for peace, okay? The woman said coldly, For peace? I think you're here to hook up with a woman. We're leaving tomorrow. Hao Ren was stunned. Didn't we say the day after tomorrow? Jin Shirsher glanced in the direction of the zombie farm. The day after tomorrow? You still want to hook up with that vixen? I'll kill her tonight. Hao Ren's forehead broke out in cold sweat again. Fine, fine, fine. Tomorrow it is. You're good, you're the boss. I'm begging you, please don't cause any more trouble. Jin Shirsher rolled her eyes at Hao Ren and said, You should say that to yourself. After saying that, she held her head high and strode away. Hao Ren, on the other hand, was like an obedient dog, obediently following behind. The next morning, Emosher woke up early as usual. Although life in the zombie farm was leisurely and he could sleep in. But after becoming a hunter in psychokinesis, he was full of energy. Although he always went to bed after midnight, he was already awake at 6 in the morning. He first fed the pigs, then took the pork from the slaughterhouse. He went to his row of zombie farms and fed them one by one. Happy also woke up at this time. She saw Immortality and smiled sweetly. Immortality instantly felt that the whole world was bright. Then Happy also took the meat and began to feed the zombies. After a while, Immortality opened the door of a zombie farm. But suddenly he heard a few clanking sounds from Happy's side. It was clearly the sound of a plate falling to the ground. The next moment, the sound of hurried footsteps could be heard. Happy ran out of the zombie farm in a panic. Behind her was a zombie with a mouth full of blood. It roared like a beast and chased after Happy. Chapter 82. Happy ran out of her corpse reclamation room in a panic. The grape leaves under her feet also flew up. Her right hand was already dripping with blood. Blood spilled on the fallen leaves in the yard, and the fallen leaves instantly looked like blood-red butterflies. They danced behind her. Behind her, a zombie with a mouth full of blood chased after her like a beast. It let out a bone-chilling roar. It chased after Happy. Happy was extremely flustered. She saw Immortality come out of the room. She did not run towards Immortality, but away from Immortality. When Immortality saw this, his face immediately darkened. He took a step forward and instantly covered 50 meters. When he arrived in front of Happy, he pulled him over and placed him behind him. Then he was about to attack. But at that moment, the door of the room beside the aisle suddenly opened. A shadow jumped out from inside. The crowbar in the person's hand hit the zombie's head with a whine. Bang! Blood gushed out of the zombie's head, and it immediately fell to the ground. But the person used too much force and did not stop. After the crowbar hit the zombie, it bounced towards Immortality. Immortality hugged Happy and gently turned his body. He avoided the crowbar. He looked up. The person was Old Ma. Old Ma's expression was solemn. He asked Immortality, "Are you okay?" Immortality shook his head. Old Ma saw the blood on Happy's right hand, and his expression suddenly froze. Happy was bitten. Immortality's expression was gloomy. "Don't worry." At that moment, Old Lee also heard the commotion and rushed over. When he saw Happy was bitten, pain immediately appeared in his eyes. Happy's eyes were filled with extreme sadness. It was not because of the physical pain. It was because of the sadness in her heart. She was going to become a zombie. At that time she would never know Brother Mo again. In pain she wanted to push Immortality away. She was going to become a zombie and she could not drag Brother Mo down. However, Immortality's arm was so strong. She could not push him away at all. Immortality hugged Happy tightly and comforted her softly by her ear. "Don't worry, you won't turn into a zombie, trust me." He had once asked Happy and Old Lee to inject the antibodies against Virus X. But even so, when he saw the blood on Happy's right hand, his heart still ached. It was a heart-wrenching pain, as if someone was gripping his heart tightly. He didn't even feel this much pain when his leg was bitten off by a zombie. This was the first time in his life that he felt this way. He carefully held Happy's hand and wrapped his arm around her shoulders. "Go to my house. I have medicine." Old Ma hurriedly pulled Immortality aside and said, "Xiao Mo, she's about to turn into a zombie. Let her go." Happy also wanted to break free. But Immortality held her so tightly. It was as if he was never willing to let go of her again. At the same time, Immortality shook off Old Ma's hand and said in a low voice, "It's impossible for her to become a zombie. Even if she becomes a zombie, I will still raise her." As he spoke, he happily strode back to his house. Old Lee quickly called out from behind, Xiao Mo, let her go. I know I don't want her to turn into a zombie, but she's about to change. I can't lose my son after losing my daughter." Old Lee was so anxious that he sounded like he was about to cry. He wanted to catch up to Immortality and Happy. But with his legs he couldn't catch up at all. In a hurry he shouted to Old Ma, "Old Ma, quickly pull him back, quick." However, Old Ma didn't react. He turned to look at Old Ma and saw that Old Ma's expression was dull. Old Lee frowned. Why was Old Ma in a daze at this time? He couldn't care less and limped toward Immortality. However, Immortality slammed the door shut with a clang. Old Lee was so anxious that he was sweating. He kept knocking on the door outside, but there was no response. He called Old Ma for help again. Old Ma wasn't as dull as before, but his reaction seemed to be much slower. Old Lee was so anxious that he wanted to cry. "What's going on?" "I, Old Lee, am about to be buried in the ground, but I have to send my child away?" At this time old Ma was shocked by Emoshir's words just now. Even if she becomes a zombie, I will still raise her. Isn't this talking about me, old Ma? Could it be that Emoshir knows that I raise zombies? If others knew that he raised zombies, he wouldn't care if his reputation was ruined. But would those people take his wife away from him? How can that be? I can't let that happen. It seems that I have to have a good talk with Xiao Emo in the future. At this time in Emoshir's room, he pulled out a box beside the bed and took out a bottle of recovery medicine. He had checked in too many times and his space was almost full with other things. There was only one bottle of recovery medicine left in the space, and it was used by him a few days ago. Fortunately, he remembered that when he tidied up the space he took out some unimportant things and stuffed them all over the room. This bottle of recovery medicine was one of them. He opened the bottle cap, handed the bottle of recovery medicine to Happy and said softly, "Drink it." Happy was very obedient and nodded. She opened her mouth and drank it. Soon the flesh on the wound was squirming quickly. It recovered at a speed visible to the naked eye. Happy's beautiful eyes widened as she looked at her right hand in disbelief. In just 5 minutes her right hand was as good as new. Apart from the large amount of blood on her fingers, it was impossible to tell that she had been injured before. Emoshir held Happy's right hand tightly and said softly, "Happy, does it still hurt?" Happy quickly shook her head. Emoshir said again, "Don't worry, the medicine I injected you with before is an antibody to the virus. You won't become a zombie." When Happy heard this, the last trace of worry on her face disappeared. She smiled happily. At this time she already understood that Brother Emo was really a mysterious powerhouse. Otherwise, who else could take out an antibody to the virus? The laboratory hadn't figured it out yet. Moreover, no one else could heal such a big wound in just 5 minutes. In addition, Brother Emo seemed to have crossed half of the yard in the blink of an eye to come to her side. Apart from the mysterious powerhouse, perhaps even those hunters couldn't be so fast. Emoshir remembered that Happy had clearly seen him just now, but she didn't run to him. Instead she ran far away. He couldn't help but feel pain in his heart again. He also knew that Happy might have already guessed that he was the mysterious powerhouse. But she was just guessing and didn't dare to be 100% sure. In that kind of situation just now, before she was 100% sure that he was the mysterious powerhouse, Happy would definitely not lead the zombies to his side. When he thought of this, he couldn't help but feel touched. He rubbed Happy's head and messed up her hair. Silly girl. Happy, on the other hand, cried. Happy tears. She just heard Brother Emo say that even if she became a zombie, he would still take care of her. When she thought of this, she held Emoshir's hand tightly. However, Emoshir's heart turned cold at this moment. How could the zombies in Happy's zombie room suddenly break free from the chains? If it was an accident, it would be fine. But if it was man-made, then they would have to bear the brunt of a level 10 psychokinesis. Chapter 83. 83. Murderer. After Happy took the recovery potion, his body recovered in a short 5 minutes. However, Emoshir felt that there was something fishy about this. It was definitely not an accident. Outside the door, Oldly was still knocking on the door. Emoshir opened the door and said, "Happy is fine." Oldly and Old Ma quickly looked over. They saw that not only did Happy not turn into a zombie, but the wound on his hand had also completely disappeared. Both of them were very surprised. Emoshir looked at Old Ma and said, "There's something fishy about this." Old Ma nodded. Of course there was something fishy. However, he felt that Emoshir was even more fishy. Happy was clearly bitten by a zombie, but he was brought into the room by Emoshir. Not only did he not turn into a zombie, but the terrifying wound on the back of his hand had also completely disappeared. Was there anything more fishy than this? However, he was after all a general and someone who had been the chief of a base. With just a thought, he had already guessed most of it. He did not say anything. Everyone had their secrets. Since it was very likely that Emoshir had already discovered his secret but had not made it public, then he naturally would not reveal Emoshir's secret. He said to Oldly beside him, "Call a few people over to deal with the corpse. Don't mention Happy's injury for now." Although Oldly was an honest man, he was not a fool. Besides, he treated Emoshir and Happy as his children. He knew that this matter could not be mentioned at this time. He immediately nodded. "I know." Then he walked out. Emoshir went to the morgue where the accident happened. He covered the entire room and the surroundings with his psychic power to investigate carefully. Soon he found a clue. He saw that the end of the chain had a small opening. At first glance, this should be the chain that had been used for a long time. It had been worn very thin, which was why the zombie had used brute force to break free. However, Mosher knew that Happy was very careful. As long as he found that more than half of the chain was worn out, he would find someone to replace it with a new chain. Although this chain was not new, it was not worn out much. Furthermore, the age of the last ring was slightly different from that of the other rings. Normal people might not be able to notice this difference. However, Mosher had level 10 telekinesis. This small difference that was difficult to detect was as obvious as under a microscope in his eyes. On the surface, this chain looked no different from the other chains. But in fact, it had long been rusted beyond recognition. It was just that its surface had been treated so that it didn't look too old. It was obvious that someone had changed the chain in advance. In Mosher's heart, anger suddenly rose. It was man-made. Someone wanted to kill Happy. Perhaps it was not his weakness. Instead, it was directed at him. Mosher's expression was incomparably gloomy. His eyes were filled with killing intent. His immense telekinesis instantly spread out. It covered a radius of 1,000 meters. Within 1,000 meters, everything could be as big as the overall layout of each building or as small as a fingerprint left behind by someone. Everything entered his mind. After reaching level 10, his telekinesis was already able to detect minute details. Fingerprints that were hard to see with the human eye were as obvious as a searchlight to him. Old Ma also came over at this time and asked, "What did you find?" Mosher shook his head. From the investigation of his telekinesis, he had not found anyone suspicious so far. Before finding the murderer, he did not want to tell anyone. At the same time, the people of the corpse hunting team also arrived. Now that there was a hunting group, the function of the corpse hunting team had been changed from hunting corpses to dealing with some chores. Their function was similar to the police before the apocalypse. The person of the corpse hunting team asked, "Is anyone injured?" Oldly glanced at Happy, lowered his head and answered, "No." The corpse hunters heaved a sigh of relief. Oldly said again, "We all feel that something is not right about this matter." The captain of the corpse hunting team joked, "Why? Could it be that someone wants to harm a corpse keeper?" Old Ma's expression was solemn as he said, "Happy is a very careful girl. It's impossible that the chain is so badly worn and she didn't notice it. There must be something fishy about this matter. Please investigate carefully." When the captain of the corpse hunting team heard the previous chief say so, he immediately took it seriously. He asked the team members to investigate the scene carefully. In the end, they found that there was something wrong with the chain. "Have there been any suspicious people coming to the corpse farm recently? Or has anyone come to the corpse farm?" Old Ma thought about it and answered, "Suspicious people? No one else. Oh, by the way, the two people from base C2 came yesterday." The members of the corpse hunting team looked at each other, and they seemed to have understood something. Oldly also reacted. "That's right, it must be them. Why did they come to our corpse farm for no reason? And ever since they came to our base has not been peaceful. First, Little Bean was attacked. Then, the mutated zombie ran out of the lab. Now, the zombies in the corpse farm mysteriously ran out. They must be the ones who did it." When Happy heard this, she seemed to have thought of something. She gestured with sign language. Oldly translated, she said that when they came yesterday, she noticed that the man's gaze was malicious. When the woman looked at her, she seemed to be a little angry. "Those two bastards." Of course, the last sentence was Old Lee's own words. When Old Ma heard this, he pondered for a moment. He analyzed, "I noticed what Happy said at that time as well. That woman called Jin Shirshir was not angry, but she has always been a jealous woman." The corpse hunters nodded in agreement. Jealous women were the scariest. The captain said, "For now, the two people from base C2 are the most suspicious. And one of them is a hunter and the other is a psychokinesis. It's easy for them to do all this. As for their motive, it's very likely that they want to destroy base C1 so that they can obtain our resources. Of course, this is just a preliminary guess. We still need to investigate further. In any case, let's take those two people into custody first." When Mosher heard this, anger surged in his heart. Killing intent burst out of his eyes. The captain of the corpse hunters led his men and quickly went to the two people's residence. At the same time, he had someone inform the body hunters. One of them was a hunter and the other was a psychokinesis. If they really wanted to resist, the corpse hunters would not be able to handle them. At this time, the two people were already packing up and planning to leave by helicopter. The captain of the corpse hunters gritted his teeth and blocked the two people's path. Both of you, a case happened at the corpse farm today and you two are the most suspicious. So I can't let you leave. Zhen Shishir, who was dressed in leather, was instantly angry when she heard this. You were the one who chased us away and now we want to leave, you are the one who is stopping us. Do you people from Base C1 really think that a level 4 psychokinesis is easy to deal with? The corpse hunters knew that a level 4 psychokinesis was not to be trifled with. But at this time they could only brace themselves. In short, when this matter is investigated clearly and there are no problems, you can leave. The woman stood upright and sneered, if we want to leave, who can stop us? As she spoke, she used her telekinesis. Thump, 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 all the corpse hunters at the scene knelt on the ground. These corpse hunters still wanted to resist. But Hao Ren had already attacked. Bang 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 bang, 5 kicks in a row. The 5 corpse hunters were all sent flying more than 20 meters away. After landing, they rolled for another 5 or 6 meters before coming to a stop. They all vomited blood and coughed repeatedly. Chapter 84. 84 They're not the murderers? The man and woman had defeated the 5 members of the body hunters. Zhen Shishir snorted disdainfully and walked toward the helicopter. Hao Ren shrugged and said with a pained expression, that's right. I wanted to get along with you as an ordinary person, but I didn't expect to be alienated in return. With that, he strode toward the helicopter. However, at this moment, a few of the body hunters who lived nearby had rushed over. One of them even aimed a rocket launcher at the helicopter. Zhen Shishir frowned when she saw this. You're courting death. As she spoke, she unzipped her leather jacket. 48 flying daggers suddenly floated out from the leather jacket. They flew toward the body hunter who was holding the rocket launcher. Puff, 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 puff. In almost an instant, the arms of the body hunter with the rocket launcher were dripping with blood. The other body hunters wanted to attack. However, the 48 flying daggers kept shuttling back and forth on their bodies. Puff, 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 puff. The sound of the sharp daggers piercing into flesh was heard. Moreover, this woman did not kill these body hunters directly. Instead, she let the 48 flying daggers cut through their limbs and bodies, making them suffer the pain of their bodies being cut. At this moment, a shadow in the distance flew toward them at an extremely fast speed. Whoosh, in almost 2 seconds, it had arrived in front of them. Hao Ren snorted when he saw this. He threw a punch at the shadow. Bang! That shadow was instantly blown apart by the explosion. A cloud of dark green smoke suddenly spread out in all directions. Oh no, we've been tricked. Hao Ren quickly covered his nose. Zhen Shishir also held her breath. However, it was too late. Although the two of them had only inhaled 1 breath. However, their consciousness was gradually becoming blurry. It turned out that after the incident with the body hunters last time, the laboratory had set up a special project to develop a weapon to deal with hunters and psychokinesis. In the end, they developed this high-strength anesthetic bomb. As long as the anesthetic bomb exploded, hunters and psychokinesis inhaled the high-strength anesthetic inside the bomb would be anesthetized in just 10 seconds. Zhen Shishir fell to the ground in just 2 seconds. Hao Ren held on for 10 seconds but in the end he couldn't hold on. He cursed, it's hard to be a good person. He fell to the ground. After a moment he lost consciousness. It was not until then that the 2 hunters of the body hunters appeared. They took these 2 people. That afternoon almost everyone knew about this. Everyone in the entire base was burning with anger. They spontaneously came to the detention room where the 2 men were being held and cursed and roared. These 2 fellows are definitely up to no good. Since they've been here It's this the gods' loss. They hurt the hunters and used throwing knives to cut the hunters' hands and feet instead of giving them a quick death. They're animals. He's just like Lun Yan and Lu Wang. Kill them. No, they're so cruel. They should be burned to death. Burn them. Burn them. Because of Lu Wang and Lun Yan, the people of Base C1 didn't trust outsiders very much. Now, the actions of these 2 people had finally ignited everyone's anger. In the end, it was Guizhu Tao, the leader of the body hunters, who came. He persuaded everyone they've done such a thing. Everyone wants to kill them. I'm no exception. But there's a procedure for everything. This matter needs to be further interrogated to determine their guilt. Only then can they be punished. So everyone should go back first. When there's a result here, I'll inform everyone immediately. At first, everyone still didn't agree. But they still respected the leader of the body hunters. In the end, after more than 10 minutes of persuasion by Guizhu Tao, everyone left. At this time, Mo Sure was walking step by step toward the detention center. No one knew how much anger Mo Sure needed to vent at this time. When he was only 1,000 meters away from the detention center, he had already spread out his telekinesis. He could clearly detect that Guojutao was personally interrogating the two people in the detention center. Hao Ren was really panicking at this time. He thought that with their strength they could do whatever they wanted in this base. But he didn't expect that they would be easily subdued by a strong anesthetic bomb. This base C1 could actually develop such a thing. It seemed that the base still needed a laboratory. As for Jin Shishir, although she wasn't as panicked as Hao Ren, there was a trace of regret and panic in her eyes. Guojutao entered the detention center and looked at the two people who were tied up like dumplings. He said coldly, "Speak." Hao Ren shook his head repeatedly. "Leader, I can swear to God that we didn't do it." "Absolutely not." Guojutao snorted and said to the people outside, "Send this guy to the zombie farm to feed the zombies." Immediately, someone came in and dragged Hao Ren out. Outside the door, Hao Ren made a squeal like a pig being slaughtered. "What I said is true, leader." Guojutao didn't care at all. He looked at Jin Shishir and said, "It's your turn." Jin Shishir's face turned pale. At this time she no longer had the arrogance from before. She said with a trembling voice, "It's not us, we didn't do anything." You didn't do anything?" Attacking a captain, mutated zombies escaped from the laboratory, zombies in the zombie farm broke free from the chains. "Since you came, strange things have happened one after another. You're telling me it has nothing to do with you?" The woman in leather shook her head repeatedly. "It's really not us." Guojutao nodded. "Well, then I'll ask another question. You can't deny that you used a flying knife to hurt those zombie hunters. And you didn't kill them directly but tortured them cruelly with a flying knife. What can't a person like you do?" The woman in leather shook her head again. I didn't torture them, I just wanted to scare them away. Otherwise they would have been killed long ago." Guojutao obviously didn't believe this. He nodded. "Well, you still don't want to tell the truth? You'll be fed to the zombies later." About a kilometer away from the detention room, Mo Sure, whose heart was burning with rage, suddenly stopped in his tracks. After his telekinesis reached level 10, he could detect slight changes in people's brain waves. When people lie, the frequency of their brain waves will be slightly faster than when they tell the truth. When the man and woman were being interrogated just now, their brainwave frequency did not change at all from the usual while they were speaking. This was enough to show that what the two said was true. All the previous signs pointed to the two of them as the culprits. But now he suddenly found that these two people weren't the murderers. Mo Sure frowned. If it wasn't them, then who? If it wasn't them, who else could it be? Could it be that the clues were cut off here? Chapter 85. If these two people were not the murderer, then who could it be? Mo Sure frowned. He had been living a carefree life before. He rarely used his brain. At most, he would think about where to check in and how to get evolution points. When did he solve a case? But after a while he thought of someone. From the looks of it, Xiaodou was attacked, the mutated zombie escaped from the laboratory, and the zombie chain in the zombie farm was changed. These three things were very likely to be related. Then Xiaodou was the key person. Thinking of this, he immediately strode to the hospital. Xiaodou's injuries were more serious. Although a week had passed, he was still in the intensive care unit. Mo Sure came to Xiaodou's ward. The intensive care unit was not a place that anyone could enter. He told the nurse that Xiaodou was once his colleague. The nurse hesitated for a moment and asked the doctor. Finally she entered the ward and asked Xiaodou. Then she walked out and whispered to Mo Sure, "Don't let the patient speak. You only have 5 minutes." Mo Sure nodded and entered the intensive care unit. In the intensive care unit, a strong smell of medicine assailed his nose. The room was very quiet. Only the sound of the ECG monitor could be heard. Beep, beep, it was like a countdown to life. Mo Sure came to the bedside and saw that Xiaodou's eyes were tightly shut. He seemed to be in pain. He paused for a moment and said, "Xiaodou." When Xiaodou heard this, his eyelids trembled a few times and he opened his eyes. His eyes flickered and he seemed to be a little excited. He opened his mouth with difficulty. "I have been waiting for you." When he spoke, it was as if there was something stuck in his throat. It was uncomfortable to hear. Mo Sure nodded. "Go ahead." Xiaodou opened his mouth again with difficulty. "The person who injured me was not planning to attack me. He was planning to attack you." Mo Sure heard this and his eyes flickered. He looked at Xiaodou. This meant that Xiaodou took a bullet for him. He had always thought that Xiaodou was selfish and only cared about himself. He did not expect that he would take a bullet for him. Xiaodou's throat made a noise. He panted for a moment before continuing. I may be selfish in small matters, but you are the guardian of the base. The base cannot live without you. Emotier looked at Xiaodou, his heart stirring slightly. You saw the murderer? Little Bean gasped for breath with difficulty and said, his face was covered, but I am very sensitive to a person's body shape. As long as I see his figure, I will be able to recognize him. Emotier nodded. When you recover tomorrow, I'll bring everyone in the base to you for you to recognize. His tone was filled with boundless dominance and ice-cold killing intent. That night, when Emotier signed in, he didn't sign any more enhancers. Instead, he signed 10 bottles of recovery potion. He had been too careless in the past. He believed that with his strength, there were very few things in the base that could hurt him. Therefore, they didn't pay much attention to the recovery potion. The effect of the recovery potion was too heaven-defying. It was impossible for him to casually give it to others. Hence, he did not have a lot of recovery medicine in stock, and he had already given Happy his last bottle during the day. But after this incident, Emotier understood. He still had to prepare a few bottles of recovery potion on a daily basis. Although he might not be able to use it himself, and he was not a saint who would casually give it to others. But he could not guarantee that under special circumstances, he would use it to save the lives of key people. Just like now. Emotier did not delay. After getting the recovery potion, he immediately rushed to the hospital. However, when he was more than 900 meters away from the hospital, he suddenly felt that something was not right. He spread out his psychokinesis. In an instant, everything within a radius of 1,000 meters had nowhere to hide. Sure enough, he detected a figure near the flower bed behind the hospital's inpatient department building. Moreover, this person was a psychokinesis. He was controlling a throwing knife to fly toward the window on the second floor. And that window was the window of Xiaodou's intensive care unit. When Emotier saw this, the killing intent in his eyes appeared again. The berserk pressure instantly pressed down on him. The black figure only felt as if there was an overwhelming pressure around him that pressed down on him. His psychokinesis was suppressed back into his body in an instant. The throwing knife fell into the flower bed under the window. He was shocked in his heart. His eyes were full of panic and he hurriedly tried to escape. However, the next moment, Emotier's figure crossed more than 900 meters in an instant and was already in front of him. In the place where Emotier just stood, under the moonlight, there was only a 10-meter-tall and 30-meter-long dragon shadow left. After a while, the shadow slowly dissipated. When the black figure saw Emotier suddenly appear, he was even more terrified. He obviously knew Emotier's strength and knew that in front of Emotier, he had no chance of escaping at all. Emotier's eyes were cold and filled with killing intent. Speak. He only spat out this word that was as cold as a knife. The black figure's face was terrified, but he shook his head. No. I can't. Before his voice died away. He felt a violent and unparalleled psychokinesis rush into his brain in an instant. The next moment his brain went blank. His whole person was stunned on the spot. There was no longer any fear on his face. He looked around foolishly. Just like a fool. This was the skill that Emotier had signed in, memory plunder. With an unparalleled psychokinesis, he could forcibly plunder other people's memories. And the intelligence of those who had their memories plundered would be greatly reduced in an instant, or even directly become an idiot. In Emotier's mind there were many more memories. From these memories he saw the person who issued the mission to psychokinesis. It was a man wearing a black mask and camouflage clothes. The man with the black mask had a rough voice. He said, I didn't expect that after we carefully arranged so many clues to lead him to those two people, he still saw through it. We were careless and didn't kill the captain in advance. Go tonight and kill the captain. Emotier saw the masked man's figure from the memory of psychokinesis. For him, who was at level 10 psychokinesis, his sensitivity to the figure was far beyond that of ordinary people. Next, he just needed to find this person in the base. Then he would be able to find the real culprit behind the scenes. At this moment, psychokinesis, who had already become a fool, slowly moved his feet. He walked into the distance unconsciously. Emotier moved his psychokinesis. Bang, there was a soft sound. That person's head suddenly exploded into a cloud of blood mist. These people, no matter who they were targeting, they had almost killed him. Then they didn't even have the right to be fools. There was only one result for them. Death. Emotier didn't pay attention to his corpse. With a leap, he had already arrived at the window on the second floor. He pushed open the window and entered the room. In the room, the nurse who accompanied Xiaodou was taking a nap. Xiaodou was also sleeping. Immortality took out a bottle of recovery medicine. He opened Xiaodou's mouth and poured it down his throat. Then he jumped out of the ward. He spread out his psychokinesis and explored an area with a diameter of 2 kilometers. With light footsteps, he rushed out of the hospital like a black light with endless murderous intent. Chapter 86. In the base, under the moonlight. Immortality was like a black shadow that carried boundless killing intent as he flashed past at high speed. Although he did not see the masked man's face from the memory he plundered, he remembered his figure. As a level 10 psychokinesis, he could detect fingerprints. He was even more sensitive to the figure. Ordinary people's perception of the figure was at most the overall impression of height, weight, age, gender, and so on. But psychokinesis could split these overall impressions into countless parts. How wide the shoulders were, how tall the person was, and how much he weighed. How big his ears were, how far apart his legs were, how long his feet were, and how long his fingers were. Psychics only needed to use their psychic power to scan the area, and they would be able to tell what was going on. And Immortality's telekinesis had reached level 10, which was even more exaggerated. As long as he swept with his telekinesis, he could clearly see how many eyebrows there were. Therefore, to ordinary people, this small difference was as conspicuous as the brilliant sun in his eyes. In addition to his telekinesis radius of 1,000 meters, the diameter was 2,000 meters. He jumped forward at a speed of 190 meters per second. His whole body was like a radar scanning a diameter of 2,000 meters, moving forward quickly. Not a single person in the base could hide from his mind. With his speed, it would only take him 10 minutes to sweep the entire base. When Immortality's scan reached the 5th minute, in the hospital's intensive care unit, Little Bean, who was sleeping, suddenly opened his eyes. Then he felt something strange in his body. There was no longer the strange feeling in his throat. The wound near his heart no longer hurt. He could even feel that his body was full of power. In surprise, he touched the wound on his chest. There was no pain. He quickly tore the gauze on his chest. There was no wound on his chest. It had long been completely healed. Looking at the intact skin on his chest, his eyes widened. Before he went to sleep, he was half dead. He even doubted if he could ever recover. But when he woke up, his body had completely recovered. Even if he experienced it personally, he still could not believe it. What was going on? Could it be the mysterious powerhouse? Yes, it must be him. During the day, the mysterious powerhouse came. And at that time he had said, "When you recover tomorrow." He recovered by himself at night. It was definitely him. Apart from the mysterious expert, he could not think of anyone else. This made him even more amazed by the mysterious expert's ability. Previously, he only knew that the mysterious expert was very strong, so strong that it was unbelievable. But now, he realized that the mysterious expert was not only powerful, but also had such a strange ability. He was able to recover from his serious injuries in just a few hours. To put it in an exaggerated manner, this was simply akin to regenerating flesh and bones from the dead. How could the mysterious expert be so strong? Thinking of this, he jumped off the bed, went to the closet next to him and took out his clothes. He tore off the hospital gown and threw it aside. After changing into his own clothes, he immediately felt much more comfortable. The mysterious expert had said that when he recovered, he would bring everyone to him so that he could identify the murderer. Therefore, he had to be prepared in advance. The nurse who was dozing off next to him was awakened by the noise made by Xiaodou. He was instantly shocked. "Who is it?" She thought that someone else had broken into the room. And the light in the room was dim, so she could not see clearly at all. Xiaodou replied, "It's me. It's all Xiaodou." The nurse did not believe it at all. Little Bean looked like he was on the verge of death. How could it be him? She hurried to the door of the ward. He cried out in fear, "Someone come quickly, save me, save me." Suddenly, the people on the entire floor were awakened by her sharp cry for help. 2 doctors on duty and more than a dozen nurses all ran out. The nurse looked back at the figure in the room and shouted, "Someone broke into the ward. Hurry, hurry!" Everyone was shocked and hurried to the door of the ward. A male doctor wearing glasses strode into the room and slapped the light switch. He shouted to the others, "Protect the patient." As he spoke, he picked up the chair next to him and faced the figure. The others also rushed into the room and went to the bedside. This person broke into the ward in the middle of the night and was likely to harm the patient. However, the other doctor saw that there was no one on the bed except for the bedding. He immediately exclaimed, "Where is he?" Everyone also looked at the bed. Sure enough, there was no patient on the bed. Then everyone looked at the intruder. "What did you do to the patient?" the male doctor wearing glasses questioned angrily. But halfway through his words he suddenly stopped. Everyone else was also stunned at this moment. What was going on? They just felt that this person was very similar to the patient. But in a hurry they did not have time to take a closer look. Now that they looked at it, this person was more than just similar to the patient. They were exactly the same. The biggest similarity was that they were both cross-eyed. Xiaodou was a little embarrassed at this moment and said, "Well, it's me, Xiaodou." Everyone's eyes widened when they heard this sentence. The accompanying nurse looked at Little Bean from head to toe in surprise and asked tentatively, "What's wrong? Are you really Captain Xiaodou?" Xiaodou smiled bitterly and said, "Who else could it be other than me? I'm really sorry to scare everyone. Sorry." When everyone heard him admit it and saw the hospital gown thrown aside by him, they were all in disbelief. Is he really Captain Xiaodou? What's going on? Especially his attending doctor and accompanying nurse. Both of them looked at Xiaodou as if they had seen a ghost. They knew their patient best. Only 3 hours ago he was still in a critical period. He could lose his life at any time. But when he woke up he was alive and kicking. Could it be any more exaggerated? Xiaodou wanted to explain, but he could not think of any words after thinking for a long time. In the end he could only honestly say, "Maybe, the mysterious strong man saved me." When everyone heard this, instead of being relieved, they were even more surprised. "Do you mean that the mysterious strong man is a doctor? A doctor with great medical skills? He has been hiding in our hospital all this time?" Xiaodou smiled bitterly and said, "I don't know. In short, I think it should be the mysterious strong man. I can't think of any other explanation except for him." The male doctor wearing glasses said in shock. "The most important thing now is to do a comprehensive examination of your body. Nurse Lee, go and invite the dean here. We must let the dean know about this." Nurse Lee was the nurse who screamed just now. She nodded quickly in surprise. "Okay, I'll go now." With that she squeezed through the crowd and walked outside. Her footsteps were extremely fast and she went far away. She was wearing flat shoes but she walked with the momentum of high heels. A moment later in the courtyard, Nurse Lee's scream came again. You're tuning in to the Han Lee's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.